Hello, GrabbZ.
Hello, hello.
Cool. Let me just double check. I got my audio the same as you. Say something for me.
1 2 3 here with the amazing DonJake.
Thank you
Wait
so
for the
much.
interview.
That's amazing. Not only just the amazing DonJake, soon to be your boss. I don't know if you saw me and your CEO hanging out the other night. We've actually signed the contract. I'm the new general manager of Fnatic. It's tenuous with the lawyers because it's been signed on a napkin at around 3 a.m. in a bar somewhere, and they're saying that's not
Yeah,
legally acceptable. But we're working hard to make that happen. So hopefully we can be working together more closely soon.
I've had worse bosses before. I don't mind.
I'm sure we'll get into that over the course of this interview. Listen, they say if you laugh, you make it to the DonJake interview. So I'm sure we're gonna have lots of laughs over the course of this. But I kind of wanted to start in a place that's away from what we're talking about because I think it's going to centrally lead into what we want to talk about. You're a man I know from having conversations about you and to you somewhat is quite into your football. You're a
Yeah,
footballing man. I
yeah,
recall an anecdote. You had a conversation with someone from I can't, you'll have to remind me who it is because you'll know what I'm talking about. You went to a dinner and you had a conversation with someone involved in the footballing world, either a coach or someone who's involved in some sort of
yeah,
ambassadorial capacity about the note. And he was gobsmacked by the notion that you're not allowed to sub players or bench players rather in league because it
yeah,
provides no incentive for behavioral kind of um, a wall. There's no consequence or whatever. So I wanted to talk to you. Talk to
yeah.
me about that. That must be where you got your start in sport, esport, so to speak, and wanting to be a coach. Talk to me about your journey there.
Yeah, it's more like through my agency back then when I had an agent. He was connected to the football world. And there were some football figures in the dinner, and we mixed around basically. And there was, I think, Jan Achterberg, who was the goalkeeper coach back then in Liverpool. And I mean, after some drinks, like it was a dinner, of course, people drank the wine. We just talked a bit. He asked me about my esports journey, and I basically just asked him like, how does he approach at that point Allison if he doesn't quite follow the instructions right? And he just said, well, if he doesn't play. And I said, yeah, well, that's fair enough, right? But how would you approach it differently? And he just didn't like. Basically, it's such an intrinsic tool in their work in football that this is the ultimate, let's say, sword hanging around their head that the player just doesn't play. That he didn't quite find an answer to tell me what he would do if he couldn't have this pressure point, right? Which is in esports just the way it is for us.
Absolutely, but I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because in league, when it comes to coaches, we're in quite a weird space. There's so much discourse at the moment, especially I'm sure you've seen the supposed leaked alleged news of things like coaches being able to speak during games next year and stuff like this. I feel like we're in such a weird position with league because it's in football, for example, different coaches have different philosophies and play styles. You know who
Yeah,
you want. If you want to save a relegation bound team, you get in a Neil Warnock, you get in someone like this. You have managers that play a possession style football. You have managers that play beautiful football. You know, you got your Tony Pulises of the world, your Allardyces, your
yeah.
Artetas, set piece and stuff like this. In league, it's like how much. This is kind of a place I wanted to start with you, being someone who watches football, being someone who's a football man. How much delineation and variation do you think there is in terms of philosophy? How much room is there for philosophy for coaching in league?
I think even compared to football, esports coaches just have way less time to actually build their roster. So in a way, I think every coach is working with what they have. Also, of course, it's hard to make your own play style if Riot can decide next week that the meta will shift. So there's no point in working, let's say, half a year on a 1v1 style for the team, and then suddenly, as we saw like some years ago, right? Drakes get more important. There's more payoff in the early game of a grouping, and then suddenly your entire strategy falls flat. Of course, coaches still have impact, but it's more that's why it's more collaboration than let's say in football, right? Where it's really rare that a team is led by players. But also, what you have in football more often is that the coach brings in the captain or talks to the captain, and then has basically a second coach in the team. And I think this is something that is quite underutilized, at least in the West. And unless you already have a player that has the pedigree and the will to win, this is something that's missing as well.
Interesting. Can I just get you to clarify that last bit, what you meant by that, in terms of what you think is lacking in the West? Can you just say that part
It's
again
more,
for me?
yeah, it's more if as a coach you don't have any actual pressure points to make the
Okay.
players play in your own way. The best way to approach it is to have someone within the team, within the players that wants to play like you want to, and then that player can influence others better than you can from the outside.
Is there not an
Okay.
is there not a danger there of sort of that player becoming like the teacher's pet, so to speak?
Yeah, there is a danger, but like in any social interaction, right? It's about how
Yeah.
you manage it. So I don't think it's inherently worse or better. But I just think the necessity is bigger in esports than in other sports where not only coaches have more pressure or like more, let's say, control over the roster, but also they work with players who went through the academies for a longer time and actually have a better understanding of how a team should function and what their role in the team is.
And presumably that's why you're such a massive advocate for academies, because in
Yes.
the East they have the kind of, it's the revolving door of constant intake. You've got someone kind of watching over you, ready to take that spot any times. I mean, even
Yeah.
this year, I mean, we saw Smash was ready to take Guma's space, and obviously the narrative now is that Guma Yushi has gone on and won the FMVP. But how much of that can be argued that he, you know, he had the pressure point of having to step his game up?
Yeah, it's not even a gun you have to fire, right? But all of us have bad days, but it can help players on their worst days to have an extra kick, to know that they're not untouchable. And I think that would make the day by day a lot easier. Um, I mean, we hear often enough in traditional sports that even these best athletes have slumps. They have lack of motivation sometimes, right? And I think it's also a protection for the team itself. Like normally, what you have in esports is if you have the sixth man, seventh man, players get really defensive because they talk about, or back then they talked about teaching my replacement. But if I'm a player and my team wants to have an academy or a second team, that also means that I am not beholden to my teammates' whims, right? I know that if I play good, and let's say my, I don't know what position, has a slump or doesn't put the work in, at least I can trust my team to then switch me out. So I think like everybody wins in that system. But I'm also aware, of course, that it costs a lot more than just running a 5-man team.
Yeah, I mean that's, I suppose that's why you have to do an academy. You can't just do the one role sub, because then it's just, it feels so
Yeah.
intensely personal if it's just one person that's got someone watching their back.
Yeah.
In regards to the conversation about, you talked about there, one of the difficulties is that players don't want to necessarily teach their counterpart. The argument that people always make for this kind of system is, oh, it's not fair on me, job security, X, Y, Z. I've kind of, I mean, I see that and I completely agree with that. I will say German labor laws somewhat circumvent a lot of that. Difficult for me to feel,
True.
difficult for me to feel entirely empathetic in that regard. Still, obviously, some degree of empathy. But I've always been of the attitude that there seems to not be an attitude in the West. I don't know necessarily in the East, but my thing is just, if you could somehow make another player better, or potentially be on an elite level like you are, if you play for one of these top orgs, G2 Fnatic, if they can be on that level, then that's another person for you to then be able to push yourself against. And the argument that is
Yeah.
made quite conveniently quite often, for example, you see a lot of people say this about G2, there's not enough people in this region to push us. So surely there should be a desire to create more people to push.
Yeah, but I think ever since like I mean, esports in the West, of course, exploded some years ago. The bubble kind of made it hard because people are too comfortable too fast, and it is a very nice lifestyle in terms of like the money you get paid, right? And of course, the more comfortable you get, the more you get paid, the more protective you are of this. Because the gaps between LEC salary and EL salary is massive. So I can also, as you said yourself, right, also empathy towards players why they want to protect it, but that's like fault of the region or the clubs itself, right, for creating this environment basically.
And what do you think, kind of, I mean, it seems like a really obvious question, but I think you can unpack quite a lot from it. Presumably LCK salaries, I mean, I don't actually have like the degree of industry knowledge, but I would assume they're not like considerably lower to the point where they are able to offset the problems of, oh, I'm going to play for XYZ reasons and it influences. Whereas what you're talking about here is in Europe, especially, I mean, it happens in NA, but it's always happened in NA, but it seems to have been an increasing problem in Europe where like the fact of the money and the lifestyle means that you're more motivated to retain a status quo rather than push beyond the limit. What would you say are kind of subliminal factors that influence stuff like that, that might not be a lot more, like, might not be ostensibly obvious to the eye for those who are looking in?
I mean, it's in general the creation of the EL system, while it made the job more secure for many more people, also meant that let's say a player who was 18 years old, right, has potential for DC. Why would he go to an academy team where he gets paid minimum salary because the team can't afford to pay more? When back then LFL, for example, already offered six-figure salaries. And that's what I mean, because in Korea, for example, let's say T1, I think they have like what, 4 academy teams, like ABCD, and they don't have to pay them a lot, right? They just give them food, a place to stay, like some a monthly allowance, let's say,
So just to say,
and
so
that's
GrabbZ in favor of child labor. That's the take on this stream.
I mean, I think there's a middle ground, right, between not getting paid at all and getting paid more
Absolutely.
than, let's say, my dad ever earned in his life, like working 44 years in a big company, right? Or like all of our dads, let's say.
I
Because
don't-
let's face it,
I
like
agree with
I'm
you.
aware that we
We got
are getting paid out of the ass here in esports.
we got to take it back to the mouse mat days. That's the old school days. You turn up, you get paid in the mouse mat.
5.5 fucking K.
That was the Dignitas meme back in the day, right? That they paid everyone in mouse
Mouse pads.
mats. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're of the opinion that kind of the acceleration of ERLs like the LFL, for example, kind of offset the. It kind of makes the path quite janky, doesn't it? Because it makes it like, oh, you rocket here, and then potentially you might have to go down here if you go in and join in on an LEC minimum. You're saying that like the path is more of a roller coaster than like a linear development.
Yeah, exactly. And especially with franchising system as well. I'm also aware that the LFL teams or the AL teams are not giving these players for free, right? They also run a business. The only way of monetizing it is the national league, and then hopefully the LEC team, sorry, comes to buy a player. So the barrier of entry also for a talented player that has chosen to go to an EL is really high. Like I think it got better over the years, but like some 4 years ago, we talked about potential six-figure buyouts for an LFL player, and that's a substantial risk for the org, right?
Yeah, I mean the market's
So
really. I think the market's really unhealthy. Like I'll tell a personal anecdote. I've told this a few times, but it's been so long now that I don't mind delving a few more details of it. So, famously or non-famously, because not that many people know about it, Hedon, who he was on Fnatic for a bit. He was
mhm,
the first time he went to ADC, he was on XL, and then when they got changed in the merger, they bought him from us. He was on Ruddy Esports, in the NLC, and the approach that for that was very much a thing of from what I remember, it was a thing where I think it was presumed that Young Buck was going to be going. They needed a new coach. It was in the middle of our ERL split. They came and made an approach for us, and it's a weird position to be in. If you're, this is as an NLC org, so one of the little fish, so more in the position of like a team that like someone like Jackie's came from, rather than like LFL or something like this. Um, where if you have a personnel like that, like a player or a coach, it's a very important piece. I remember in the approach to that, it just became a thing for me where I was just like, I felt like, well, it's kind of like I just have to ask for what I can get, and I can't say no because if I say no, I'm like completely fucking someone's future over.
yeah,
And like, especially being friends with Hedon as well, that made it more complicated. But even if not, like it was a thing where like I can't say no to the big fit because it's like basically just it's like Real Madrid knocking on the door of like a little tiny Sunday league club. It's just like why would you ever fuck someone's future over here? But
yeah,
then in football, to bring it back to, so I've got a bit of phlegm. I've got like cough or something. um, in football, where major example, you know when Haaland went to City, they paid the
yeah,
club where he trained at when he was 15. They got
yeah.
like 1 million because it's like tied to the contracts and baked into the contracts is like homegrown like values and stuff like this. It's like
I think it's
whereas
a FIFA rule. I think it's a FIFA rule that you have to pay the where you played under 14, I think, and under 16. These two clubs get
yeah, yeah,
a
yeah.
percentage. I think.
Yeah, and it's like for that, it's a thing where, well, great, this massive shark did come and swarm for this like young talent, XYZ. You know, he went to BVB, then he went to Man City, but it's like no one's been fucked, and like that Norwegian club potentially in the future, although unlikely, might be able to produce another Haaland. They're at least going to be in the position. They'll increase their training facilities, XYZ or whatever. It felt like in the situation where I had with Hedon, where it was like they literally came and they were like, "We're going to give you 10 grand." I was like, "Can you give me 15? Can you give me 20?" And they were like, "No, we're going to give you this." And it's like, well, I can't say no because it's like, well, I'm
Yeah,
fucking someone's future. And it's like they know I can't say no. That's the thing. And I think you see this quite often. I remember there's a thing with I don't want to misquote on this. Someone who's got more knowledge than me. I remember it being a thing in CS. G2 bought some players from maybe Copenhagen Flames, if you remember them. They were like a Danish org or whatever.
Mm,
And I remember the thing being like those kids were really good, but it's just like, well, they want to go to G2, so it's like you can't say no. And it's like
yeah,
I feel like orgs quite often, from what I hear, are in a position where they understand that they're in the driving seat. I remember hearing it. There was a thing for Noah and for Ice when they got bought from Zero Tenacity. I remember speaking to Hebe who's the CEO over there, and it was a thing where like the approaches that were made to them by Ellie Shields was very much like they got the impression where it was like, we're in the driver's seat now. You need to take what we're offering you. We're doing you a favor.
yeah,
Talk to me
yeah.
about that, because that is a very unhealthy market in that regard. It feels.
Yeah, it is because I mean the big sharks, as you said, also know that if you, let's say, as Ruddy Esports, whatever team you are, you prevent the player from going, that means no other young player will ever go to York because you set a precedent that a player has a chance of playing as LEC
Mm.
and he couldn't take it because of you. So that's why they know that you have to take it, right? There's just no winning for the smaller teams. I also think what happens here in the West for some reason is that the off season is over before Worlds ends for many teams. Officially, the contracts run out in 5 days, but most teams are done. Whereas you see, like in Korea, for example, Viper, no one knows where it ends up. There are some talks about On, I think, re-signed for BUG, but there are some big names waiting for free agency, as the market dictates. But we're just very lax here in the West, so everybody has constant fear of missing out. So I think it's a market that benefits the orgs a lot more, which also means that, let's say, I mean, there's no secret that Fnatic is looking to rebuild, right? We will make changes. Worlds ends, and most talents have a contract that says, yeah, you can go to see the next 7 days, and we make a decision. I can't even scout most players because they're already like locked for next year LFL because they're just afraid of missing the opportunity, right?
So you're saying
Uh,
players have a 7-day window to explore LEC offers?
I mean, they're like, for example, they have a contract that says you sign with us until end of October. If the LEC team comes, we'll let you go, basically. But for us, Worlds ends at the 23rd. So I come back from China 24th, and then these players are on the market for 6 days, basically. That exists as well. So I think it's just a very
Wow.
like the just entire market is just very very foggy.
So does that not that
It,
that heavily incentivizes a situation? For example, one of the things that like G2 and Remain got heavy flack for was the replacement of Yike and Mickey during that Worlds thing, because presumably that was a decision that was made while they were at Worlds or even before, or at least it was on the
yeah,
cards.
I
You're
have
then
to.
you have to be cut for it in that way. How does that make you, just on a purely emotional perspective? How does that make you feel?
I'm very good at separating GrabbZ, the head coach figure, from Fabian. Like, business is business. I think everybody that enters the scene kind of buys into that. Same goes for me, right? If I don't sign a contract, then I can just say, "Oh, you went 0-3 at Worlds. We don't want you anymore," and it doesn't matter how amicably we were the last weeks before that. So I don't think it's that bad. We get paid handsomely, so I don't want to like complain about it. I just think we make life a lot harder on ourselves as a region to build good teams by doing that. And that's not the case in Korea and China. Like every year you have a new super team because enough good players actually wait for the end of contract, wait for the market to develop, and then make decisions. Whereas here, many players renew by before Worlds ends because, like, if you're a team that is fifth place, let's say in Europe, and you want to keep your star player, you're not gonna wait until Worlds ends. You're not giving the other teams a chance um to go for the players. And very often it's also said, you sign with us. If you don't sign with us, we don't give you permission to talk until end of Worlds. And of course, they're like or like end of contract, sorry, which is mid-November. And as we just said, most teams are done by that point. Um, and that's still a situation we have in the West. And I'm not quite sure to solve it. I have no idea.
So
But
just to clarify, why does that not happen in the East? Because from that it's presumed that potentially they're more willing to do deals and sell players. Is that what I'm to infer from that?
I mean, they just let contracts run out. And then teams wait for contracts to run out.
But why does that
And then
happen?
players,
Do you have any idea? Is it
I
just
don't
out
I don't
of
know.
respect or?
I actually don't know. I would like to know, and I will try to imitate that. I
I'm
think it's
gonna
better
I'm
for
gonna
the
make note of that. We'll have to get someone from the Shadow Corp or something like that on and ask them. I'd love to know because that's
yeah.
so interesting. Why that's Would you be an advocate? Would you be an advocate for any sort of transfer window or something like this? A more kind of riot mandated transfer window? Do you think that would help a situation like this?
We technically have it right, but there's so many ways to circumvent that, and it becomes basically the prisoner's dilemma that if you don't play unfair, but they play unfair, you lose out. So everybody just tries to get their deals done as soon as possible, get their verbals in as soon as possible. No one trusts each other, so that could be a reason. I'm not quite sure how to fix it again because technically there are poaching rules, but you can always argue. A friend of a friend has told me that that player might work on that orc, or that orc wants the player, and then suddenly, how do you prove it, right? Um,
Yeah, I think it's just generally it's an issue. I feel like what's your general opinion on agents then dealing with them over the years? Because me, I've dealt with a few agents, and I've dealt with enough agents to where it's like I've tried to sign a player in ERL, but then I know how the agent is because they also represent players in LEC. So it's like even though I've not dealt with the LEC world, I can see and I don't know. If I'm being completely frank, I think a lot of them are complete wankers, and like you don't have to share that
I
opinion,
agree.
but like that.
I
Okay,
agree.
cool. But you just came out and said it. Yeah, some of the most monosyllabic, syphilitic scabs on the bell end of mankind that I've ever really encountered in my life. Like it's
That goes
like
a bit far than I would
yeah.
say, but
I really don't enjoy speaking to a lot of them, to be honest. And I wanted to kind of get your take on that because obviously you're biased. You want to get a
yeah.
player in. You're on the and same for me. I'll put my cards on the table. Um, I don't like dealing with agents because they want to, squeeze as much money out of me as possible. But on the other side as well, they want to get the best deal for their players. My problem is when it goes a little bit further than that. So with biases in acknowledgement, what is your opinion on that, and how does it tie into what you're talking about with the playing unfair and the general market unsafety?
I think there are a few really good agents that I respect a lot, but there are a lot of people as well that basically just appear whenever a contract has to be signed and then fuck off. Had stories didn't happen in my teams, but a player that didn't come from Germany was stranded in Germany. No one could help him. Like
I've
the
heard about
team
this.
didn't. Like the team said, you have an agent. He should help you with health insurance and finding a space and whatever. And the agent was just AFK. Like he got his money, and then basically a year after he came back, like, hey, do you need help? Um, that also happens, right? So agents are, I think, a necessary evil because ultimately I am always an advocate of giving more power to the players, and that's a tool for players to get more information in the market. Um, so ultimately, I think it's good. I don't have a solution how to regulate it better. Generally, if a player is watching, I would argue that if your agent has 5 players in all positions, he might not have your best interest at heart, and he might just use them to maximize his monetary gain. Right? If you have 5 players that like 35 players you want to bring into the LSC,
Especially if they're the same profile of player as well.
yeah. And then, well, Wonder, I think the more expensive player will get a team and you won't because, of course, then there's more percentage for the agent, right?
Yeah.
Um, but again, I think there are also quite a few agents that do a really good job. They support a lot. They also come to us coaches and ask us, is the player performing like he should be? Is there anything I should know? Is there like something I can help you
Do you
with?
want to give a shout out to those
Um,
agents if you're comfortable? Because I think those agents deserve love.
if I shout out the good agents, that also implicates the bad ones. So why not? They will know.
Fair enough. The thing that annoys me and always gobsmacks me is sometimes the percentage I hear that agents claim of salaries. I don't know if you've heard some of the crazy percentages. So like I'm pretty sure, let me just double check this. Football agent percentage average. Just to make sure I'm not quoting a I've heard like in football it's typically like 1.5% to like 5%, maybe a little bit higher. I've heard
Mm.
anywhere up to like 10, sometimes 12.5 for some agents
Yeah, the 12 ones as well. Yeah,
in league,
I
which is
think.
just like for me, if you're charging that much, it's like, do you do my laundry? Like, do you come and give me a massage? Like, are you driving me to the office in the morning? Like, it's an obscene amount of money to be taking from people, no? For the amount of
Yeah,
work that some of them do.
like for me, my agent at least when I had one back then, he's kind of out of esports right now. He had enough. He got 10%, but from the org side,
Okay.
which Obviously, it also comes from my paycheck because the org can pay me less, but with all gross and net salaries, how that works, it's a lot easier. And I think that's getting more and more common. So the players technically don't even pay their own agents anymore. It goes mostly through the orgs.
Interesting, but I'm presumably that all of this all of these things work in tandem to kind of create what we're talking about. And I think this is an interesting first topic for us to have spoken about because we're talking about. I feel like this is not really something that people talk about in regards to what creates parity between West and East when you talk about this off season. And it's a good place to start because we're in the off season right now. Are these things that I mean, you clearly from what you're saying, the 6 days of speaking to LEC players, that's probably been an encumbrance for you in this off season.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm just a coach, so it's a bit easier for me than for management itself, who also has to haggle with like all the financial stuff. Um, so front facing to me, of course, the agents are all pleasant, right? I'm not sure how they negotiate with the managers. Can't tell you about that one. Probably a bit a different tone there, but at least like they have an interest of me liking them and liking their clients, so that's how they
So
behave.
shame it doesn't work out does in football. You can't just like do a Ferguson and call up like Paul Gascoigne and just be like, I want you to come to Old Trafford, and that's just how it's
Yeah.
that's just how it's done. I think that's called poaching. I think Carlos tried to do that. I'm not sure you can get away with that in league. Um, in any
No
case,
comment.
in any case,
Pool parties.
I wanted to talk to you about we talked about kind of football for you. Talk to me about the beginning of esports, how you got into coaching, the journey to I mean, your first big job, I believe, was G2, but I presume you were doing things before that as well.
Yeah, I had 2 years in ADC on the Rocket back then.
Okay.
Rocket became Rogue. It basically just started by my childhood was basically school, football, and then gaming. Like my dad was like had a Super Nintendo back in the day. One of my first memories is just playing A Link to the Past console. Godot game, by the way. If you haven't played it yet,
Mm.
go ahead. Um, and then I studied economy in Berlin. Back then, I think the ADC was about to move to Berlin from Cologne, and I was a big esports fan, but never really had the idea of working there. And I studied economy, and then Unicorns of Love back in 2014 now, does I think. We're looking for like an analyst online. And I was like, hell, I have some time left over. To be fair, at that point I was mostly exploring Berlin's nightlife and studying because I turned 18 in Berlin. I started studying at 17. Not the best combination, I can tell you. Um, and then I did that. Then wasn't too happy
Surprised that's
with.
not how you met some of the GMs actually in some of the in some of the
So
Berlin
what happened?
nightclub.
No, no. Not at that time. But yeah, basically from there I got to know certain people in the scene. I left Unicorns, got a chance to work with Giants back then. I mean, Giants is now back, but back then they were an org as well. Kind of dropped from the ADC for some years. And then Giants work in the same office as Rocket. Like back then, gaming houses and offices were like a bit different. The scene was new, so I saw the Rocket guys every day. And when they fired the coach, I was thinking, hell, I can do what he did. I can do as well. That's not too hard. And then it was simple from there. Like in a way, it is nepotism because I knew the guy personally because I
It's
was
called
in the same
networking.
office.
It's networking, man.
And networking is the fancy word, yeah, I guess. It's luck. I think for most people, it's just luck. You have to be ready to take the chance, right? But I think there are many also people that qualified and they never get the shot. Did Rocket for 1.5 years. I joined, I think, in April, like mid split. Had some interesting seasons with long loss streaks, long win streaks. Should have gotten playoffs after a miracle run until I got briefed by Misfits, which I'll never forget.
Who are some of your players on
Yeah,
these rosters? Because I can't quite remember these teams.
towards the end it was Jan Vadit. Betsy was the mid laner. Um, Faxi was by the end the top laner. I had Memento for a short while. Was Memento at the end? I had Aerox, Memento in the jungle. I'm forgetting a name for sure. I'm getting old. I don't reminisce about the time that often. I also had some Koreans back then. My first experiences, Parang, Race, were some names before Vadit came in.
What do you think about?
Pride Stalker, true.
I've got
Sorry.
two directions I want to go in with this question. I need to. I'll say what both of them are so I don't remember. I don't forget. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is again going back to football because I find such interesting analogs. like when like lots of coaches like Pep always talks about, oh, I played with this player or I managed this player and I knew they would be a good coach. It's interesting there you mentioned you played with you had as a player Hjarnan and also Memento. Obviously Hjarnan hasn't coached in the LEC, I don't think, but he's been a coach in the Prime League for quite a few years now and doing things like that. And Memento, most recent, I mean, he got his start in the NLC, but he's on G2 now. He's actually helping out
Yeah.
their backroom staff. Did you get that impression from them that they would go on to doing something like that, or are there other players that you've had that you think, oh, you're going to be a good coach when you retire?
I mean, there were the players in the non-G2 teams that for sure were able to vocalize their thoughts more efficiently. That's something in esports that's pretty rare. We have a player that is able to think something and then make sure the people around them understand what they think. And Jan and Memento were proficient in that. So I'm not surprised. I mean, Jan, I think, was assistant for Vitality in the LSC.
Yeah, that's my bad. Someone on chat's
Yeah.
just corrected me on that.
Um, but yeah, I'm not surprised. Ultimately, if you are in the scene, you want to stay in it, kind of, right? But yeah, I think you can tell. But it's less about their quality as potential coaches and more them standing out just in the mass of people who, how do I say it nicely? I mean, there's a reason why gamers have the stereotype they have, right? Let's be honest here. And it shows also in LEC. Like some people are just they want to play their game. They don't want to talk. They don't want to put any thought in their daily routines. And then if you have a person like Yanan or Memento, they stick out, and then they eventually become coaches.
Are there other players that you've coached, like even now or maybe in the last couple of years, that G2 team, the BDS team, the Fnatic team now, that you look at them and you go, a couple of years, maybe you would have a skill set to be a coach?
Wunder could do it. Jankos could do it. Um, in BDS, I think Mati has the personality to do so. Aggressivo could do it, and uh, now in Fnatic, Apsa can be a coach. Yeah, I think
It's interesting.
these
And
names.
another thing I wanted to, oh, actually, just to finish off this line of questioning, one thing that people always talk about, a big piece of discourse for coaching, is they always say, well, we need
Oh, yeah,
more
sorry,
people.
Perks as well. I just see chat. Obviously, Luca as well.
Yeah, I think he'd be a good coach.
I don't think.
He'll get you across the line mentally.
Yeah,
Like,
I don't think he would be head coach material, but strategic
really,
coach for sure.
you don't think he's the kind of guy where it's like, guys, fucking get your head in, like, let's lock in, let's do this. Like, I think he's more of a. Would you not think he'd be a good like man manager?
No, I think he would. If he would have a bench, he can bench players too. He would thrive for sure. But he's also very direct, very harsh, and that doesn't translate to head coach. I'm not sure actually if he talked about publicly Miffy, but like Miffy, for example, also enjoys more being a strategic coach than being the head coach because you just have a different avenue of talking to players. You can be a bit more from the player side. You can be a bit
It's
more
about the
harsh, direct.
power dynamic, right?
Exactly, exactly.
It's like the idea of I talked about this in another thing. So have you ever heard you know who Slavoj Žižek is? He's a psychoanalyst, a cultural theorist, Slovenian guy. But he talks about the idea of this the postmodern boss. It's the idea that in like the old days, if you worked in like a factory in like the 80s and 90s, your boss is someone like he's a dick. You hate your boss. Like you hate going to work, you hate your boss. You're not meant to get along with him. Whereas like the
Yeah.
postmodern boss, like in like the early 2000s 2010s, like after the advent of sitcoms and post 9/11, all of this kind of stuff, like morality shift, your boss is someone you come into work and it's like, oh, how are you, man? Did you fuck your girlfriend on the weekend? Did you have a good weekend? Like, hey man, I love you, bro, let's go for a drink. Can you do overtime for me this weekend? Would that be okay? Yes, thank you so much, bro. It's kind of like it goes past that line of what is thing. Like when you have
Yeah.
that kind of power dynamic in place, it makes it difficult to kind of. I suppose that's the difficulty if you become too friendly with your players as well.
Yeah, that's why I avoid it normally. Um,
For
yeah.
sure. I wanted to ask you because what I was talking about before, the perks thing we were talking about, is a lot of what people talk about is they say we need more people that were players to be coaches and people that were players in the scenes to be kind of just in the scene in different backroom roles. Do you buy into that as fully as stock? Because surely it's valuable, but maybe not to the extent that people say it, or what's your opinion on it?
I think that just this misdiagnoses the issue we have in
Mm.
terms of how many players we have in the league who are willing to work in correct ways or ways that um, define the scene as like a sport. Um, so sure, it could help because they empathize more with the player's perspective. But ultimately, I think we have to reapproach how we work with younger players who come into the scene and how we make sure that they understand what it actually means to be in a team, what it means to put in 10 hours a day to improve your craft, how you actually improve your craft. Like, what does it mean to learn? What does it mean to improve every day? And that's what's missing. I can tell you as well, like, put me in a room with esports players, like 100, like, let's say the last 100 LSC players. After 2 hours, I can tell you which of those have played a team sport in the youth, right? It shows. If you talk to them, it shows instantly. And
But
just the approach of putting yourself into the service of the team, for example, right? Like, I try to make myself better so the team shines. How can I help my teammates? Even these very, very fundamental thought processes that we have in traditional sports are missing often enough in esports. Not because the players are malicious, but just because, again, very often we don't have youth systems, we don't have academies that are run to like ages 14, 15. That means you have a young player who gets his habits in solo queue. He plays his own way to shine, and then suddenly he's a professional. And then a coach like me comes and tells him, wait, the thing you did that got you here is wrong. Change yourself and do it fast because you play next week. That obviously creates friction and issues, right?
so
And I think that is the
you
main
think
issue.
it's a problem at which time the idea of a structure is placed upon the athlete. So, for example, in football, again, you can get put in a Premier League academy when you're like 8 years old, and
Yeah.
then it's like you are like taught and discipline and all these other mental factors that exist outside of the game are kind of given to you by that. Whereas in league, it seems to be a thing where to be put into a structure, you're typically 18, you've lived your entire life.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, you're an adult by this point, right? Like, your formative years are 14, 15.
So that I
So,
mean, basically, I mean, you've kind of already said it, but that just adds a complete level of gambling to the player you're going to get, whether or not he's played a team sport or whether or not he understands these things. How do these problems manifest? Like, what would you say are the most common examples? You said you can tell the difference between a player that's played a team sport or not. Obviously, it's not going to be the be all and end all. You'll have players that
yeah.
didn't play it and it's fine. But as an average, how are these problems manifesting? Like, what do you find it difficult to get that player to do if they don't understand that idea of a team
Mm,
sport?
to paint a picture is, it can even manifest just in a simple, my teammate is bad. What can I do to win? Versus my teammate is bad. What can I do to help him? Like, one says basically, he's dead weight. I have to win by myself. And one is taking responsibility for the team and saying, it's my job to help him get to a level that I'm happy with. And it's way more common in people that play team sports to have the mindset, how do I help my teammate? How do I adapt to him? How do I make him comfortable? Instead of, he's not doing what I want to do, therefore I don't like him.
Sort of like the thing
Which
of
of
like,
course is like a very black and white, how I phrase it, right? It's not that extreme in every player. But that already is like one of the points where you can see a big difference, like how a team environment can shape up, right? If you have more of the players that are, oh, I couldn't win because my teammates, or you have players that say, oh, we didn't win because I didn't help my teammate enough. If you have more of the former, you're gonna have like a very hard time of building an actual team cohesion. If you have more of the latter, people are more comfortable talking to each other. People are very comfortable of saying, I did something wrong, but you can also improve, and that lifts everybody up, right? And if you have someone who's 20 and never had this environment, the thing is in esports, or like I think as a human being, right? If you spend 15 hours a day in League of Legends, it becomes your life. You become that player, ego-wise. So then, if you're not used to it and a person comes, what you're doing is wrong, it is a personal attack. There's no other way of seeing it differently because you become the player because you spend so much time and you think you have this much expertise. And if you don't have the tools to deal with that, it's really hard. And it's nothing on. It's not because the player's malicious or he's stupid or he doesn't want to. It's just he never got the tools to deal with this. To take feedback like this and see, okay, I have same this, I still have the same value as a human being than before. I can just now improve on something. And that's why we always talk about like defensive players or toxic players. That's usually where the chain of like communication breaks down at that point. Like, how dare you say I did something wrong? I know my role. I know my champion. I do it better. It's not a thing of they think they're better than you. It's more they have a hard time accepting that what they did for so long is could be wrong.
Have you ever had the experience where it's like, for me, this is completely different, but it's like a thing where you meet people or you have friends potentially in your life where they have difficulties like that, and then part of knowing them and loving them and being close with them over the course of years is that you'll have that moment in time where it's like maybe one day you meet like their dad or something, or like maybe something happens to where you go, oh, this all makes sense. This is where this comes
Yeah.
from. XYZ. Is that an experience you have with players where like maybe you're not having a directly emblematic experience like that, but it's like over the course of just the proximity and the pressure cooker of spending so much time together, you suddenly have that eureka moment of like, wow, this is like this is the core of the issue here.
Yeah, it does happen quite regularly, actually. You have players who have trouble accepting criticism. They're very sensitive, and then the players come like, "Oh, my sweet boy, how are you? Oh my God, can I do something for you?" Like, of course, it's loving, but it's also very sheltering.
Yeah.
Like, that's why this player just really can't accept if someone says that he does something wrong. That makes sense. So it does happen. Ultimately, I don't think it matters because I really try to have the mindset of we are all who we are for a reason. Like, I know myself that I behave the way I behave because I chose this way from my childhood. Like certain things happened that said to me, I want to be this person. I did it consciously. For others, it happens subconsciously, right? But we all have reasons why we are how we are. So I really try to not put blame on it or view it in a negative light. I just try to adapt to it and try to work through it. But it just makes the day to day harder because also I would say, I mean, I'm head coach, right? I'm a lot more mature than the average esports player, and I have trouble adapting to each person on my team in a certain way. So how does a teammate adapt that doesn't have this maturity, this experience, also 20 years old? So these frictions that we have are the direct result of not helping these people early enough to develop tools to. I mean, first of all, of course, the human is more important, right? But now we're talking the sporting aspect to make sure that they can perform on a day by day.
And how often are you encountering? Because the famous thing for me hearing and kind of doing all of these kind of long form interviews and speaking to so many players and becoming friends with players, I feel like it's possible that my bias is being clouded by the type of people I'm speaking to, because obviously like as the light we emit, like we attract the same moths, you know, like
Yeah.
that's our kind of bias. So I'm acknowledging that, but I hear so often people being like, yeah, I moved to Berlin when I was like 19 and I didn't know how to wash my own clothes, like I didn't know how to like look after myself. How often are you encountering that, like players that just like kind of have no idea how to fend for themselves despite being an adult?
I mean, I work in Fnatic now with veterans, so it doesn't happen
Yeah,
now because
but
they have been
over the
there. But
course of
it
your entire
happens.
career.
I heard about it. It happens a lot. Yes. I also had to microwave food for a player because he was deadly terrified of microwaves because he didn't know how they work. And he also was afraid of taking the food out himself because it might be too hot. So I had to do it for him, like I think 2 weeks, until he had enough trust to see the microwave will not
You must
do
feel like
physical harm.
you must feel like a father when you do something like that, no? In some ways.
Yeah, so very often. But again, it's not that bad in Fnatic, for example. Like if you have older players, they have been through it. But I hear some horror stories from other coaches as well. And I don't feel like a father. I feel like more on the Truman Show. I feel like this can't be real, right? Somewhere's the camera. I don't believe this is actually a human interaction I'm having right now. Um, but yeah, I mean, this to be fair though, it's always easy to make fun of esports players, but I think every environment where you have really high performance asks and specialized people, this can happen. Like there are also football players who never bought their own phone, have no idea how to drive a car.
Messi's autistic as fuck.
I think most top athletes are autistic. You cannot be a
Really?
normal human being. Yes, yes. Like autism, of course, doesn't mean like the thing is people have this view of autism, right?
It's a
As this
spectrum, yeah.
exactly. And I don't think you can be a well-adjusted human being and put 10 plus hours a day into the same thing over multiple years. There has to be something wrong in your head, right? I think high performance is a very autistic thing.
Interesting.
in my opinion. I'm not an expert, right? I might just
No,
talking out of my ass here,
that's
but
fair. I kind of
um,
wanted to ask you because when I said when we created the fork in the road previously, the two conversation topics, you mentioned working with Koreans, some of the first Koreans you worked with back when you were Rocket days, and I remember that period of time being very much a thing of like, that was like the first kind of import era around about that time, I think, if I'm correct in saying, like you saw lots of players come over, lots of mid laners, lots of supports, a few junglers as well. Um, so you felt like you were going to say something there.
just like someone chat says, because I said wrong on the head when I talked about the autism. Of course, being autistic is not wrong. I didn't imply that. I
Oh, I
just
didn't
meant
see that.
it's not neurotypical behavior. I would say, if that's the way
I
to
think
phrase
you're
it.
also probably saying that as someone that isn't completely neurotypical. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Absolutely not. Like
Yeah,
I absolutely not. Like, I include myself here, 100%.
yeah, cool. Just it's good, good you got the chance to go back and see that, guys. Guys, charitable interpretations only, please. It's a good faith stream. No, but to talk about that era of having Koreans in the LEC we were talking about is kind of it was the import era for me, and it seemed to be there was a kind of a dichotomy shift a few years beyond that. I mean, you saw famously Remain is the one who takes the famously anti-import stance of like, what's the point in XYZ? And I felt like we were out of that. Like we saw rosters in Europe 2018, 2019, all European rosters going the furthest that any European team have gone, any Western team have ever gone. It feels like we've arrived back in kind of, I mean, all history repeats itself and the Ouroboros eats itself. Um, we've arrived back at that kind of similar point. There's lots of imports going on. If you can't, we're not taking ERL players typically. I think Saren's the only player to move up from ERL this split. Pretty sure
Yeah.
mid laner for Heretics. And pretty much wherever it can be done, we're getting. I think KC's new mid laner is an import. I can't remember everyone else. There's technically it's fucking NA imports now. Who could have ever believed that happening? That's a weird thing as well. But we've arrived back at this kind of Korean import thing, and obviously you guys took in Poby as an import as well. Talk to me about that. How that's come back around. What you think about it, and just kind of yeah.
It's just that at least with Koreans, you have the cultural environment where they they see this as a big chance. They're aware of the big chance, and also they come from a culture where either you're first or you're nothing. That's just Korean and Japanese culture, right? I think that I don't have to sugarcoat anything here. They're very like a lot more cutthroat in that regard as a society than we are. They have an automatic respect for their elders because of the culture. So
You know what the most
all
sorry to
these,
cut you off. The most interesting thing I've ever heard about this. I heard this from someone that is quite deep in the esports scene. I had dinner with them when I was in Korea, and the way they put it so differently to because it made it make so much more sense in my head. They basically said to me when they went to school, you were either popular for two reasons. You either got really good grades or you were really fucking good at StarCraft. And like that's like what increased your like social currency. Whereas like you imagine like when we went to school, like when we were really young, it's like who's the fastest in class? That's who gets all the girls and like I don't know who's like the first person that like meets a dealer like that's like what defined your like or like who's tall who's handsome stuff like this that it's like
yeah,
it's a completely different social dynamic out there like
okay.
sorry to cut you
And
off I'll
that's the
let you
reason
carry on.
why if you go for no, 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 good. That's why if you go for Korean, of course there's like question marks, but just eliminate some risk factors that we
Mm.
just talked about, right? Like how the player approaches team dynamics, how the player behaves in certain in stress situations. All the stuff is easier of Koreans. So unless you know a European player is really talented, there's just less risk involved in going in a similar talent Korean. If you disregard language barrier, of course. But then again, as well, like there are some AL players that I would at least want to scout. There might be in some academy teams, and I can't talk to them because of a contract. And even if I could talk to them, the buyout probably would be too high to justify.
So
That's just how
with
it is. Again, the barrier of entry is very high for EL, I think,
is it
into
is it
LEC.
easy is it easier to buy Korean players or acquire Korean players now than it is ERL players?
Yeah, I mean, Koreans just want to play. Like that, they also average ask for a lot. I can't talk anymore. Lot a lot
Less on
less money.
average.
Yes.
Yeah.
Holy. I
There's
had a
also
stroke. I'm sorry.
it's all good, it happens. There's also a thing I remember with a lot of the agencies in Korea. It's a thing where like the players on their books, because they're competing for so many limited spots in LCK, if it's a player where it's like, oh, you're probably going to sit in LCK Academy for a bit, or maybe you're not good enough to make it LCK, immediately it's like off to TCL you go. See you later. Bye.
Yeah.
We're getting you on a plane to fucking Istanbul. See you later, mate. So it's like a thing where they're very keen to get players just playing. Whereas in Europe it seems to be a thing where it's like, oh, you're on the bench at Vitality. That's like a serious income source here.
Yeah.
Sorry, Vitality, you're the best example there. But you know what I mean? It's the kind of the main difference there, isn't it? Whereas I feel like in Korea it's a thing where like they just want people playing, or they want as many talents just kind of active at a time. It's quite an interesting kind of difference, I suppose. But they also this ties into what we were talking about before. There's just more players being put through the sieve constantly. I feel like in Korea, the general thing I heard, you can't be 900 LP in Korea and like 14 years old without like someone contacting your high school and just be like, do you want to come and join like KT Academy, Academy, Academy?
Yeah.
Whereas so many players must be something you have a comment on. There's so many players in Europe, I feel like, that fall through the cracks.
Yeah. And I say it again, I'm not the biggest fan of franchising. I think it is the death of talent. Um, because like when franchising came in, everybody said, yeah, but our teams they will use this to invest in young talent, and it never happened ever, right?
They actually got
Because
rid of academies at the first opportunity they could.
exactly. Um, ultimately, also like I'm gonna like spin it a bit further, right? The most important thing for every sport is the grassroots connection. A young player playing football has to get inspired by seeing a game and having a clear path how to get there. I go to my local club, I apply there, I become good, I get scouted, I move up the ladder. Of course, in esports, you can say you have the EL system, but how do you get there? I know in Germany there's like Div 8 or something. You can apply with your friends, but
But that's more
was
like
a
it's
lot.
not like football. It's more like FIFA. It's like actually the game. Like it's like you play
Yeah,
divisions up. Like you don't feel like no one's watching Div 6. So it's like
yeah.
how the fuck do you get scouted?
But also in football, at least, like there is this fantasy. You can have 11 friends. You apply in the league. You play for 10 years, and each year become champion. You climb up. You climb up. You climb up. Eventually, you reach the Premier League, right? I mean, it is a fantasy, obviously, but
Yeah,
the path is there. And in esports, if let's say 10 owners in the LEC don't like you, you will never play LEC. You can literally be faker. There's no way for you to achieve the dream. And that sucks. And before franchising, even like I remember growing up with League of like the Go for All tournaments,
yeah.
literally where you had 5 friends queue up. They're like now there would be masters, and suddenly they meet fucking Fnatic in the tournament and get smacked, right? But like holy shit, I played against them. How cool is that? That's the gap, right? And I think we don't utilize that factor a lot because now we're like so isolated from the average player. There's no connection.
Now it's a question of business. It's a question of, oh, you want to play against Fnatic? Well, cool. If you can organize a show match and pay 500 grand and get all these sponsors involved, we could give you that
Yeah,
experience. Everything is just so kind of capitalistically tied behind a barrier, like you're talking about.
yeah,
I think another problem I have is that, I mean, like a personal anecdote, player that we had on the books at Ruddy, player that I didn't discover. I wouldn't ever claim to discover him because he's already very good by the time we had him, but definitely way before people knew about him. Natty Nat, who's just recently got on rank one in Korea,
yeah.
amazing feat. People will try and take it away from him because he's doing it on a limited champ pool, but he came and played in 2024 spring for us, and I knew him before that because he actually played the Winter Cup at the end of 2023, and incredible player. Like just, I think we had for the initial project that we had in mind for going into 2024, we had a Korean coach who I won't reveal who, but they basically couldn't do it because they got mandatory military service. Like they didn't think they were going to get it, and then like it was random that they got it.
Hmm.
And I remember speaking to him and he was like, "Oh, like this player like is really fucking good." And like he was like kind of like not willing to say that about any other player. He's just like, "It's my job. They're okay." But he was about Natty. He was like, "This guy's really fucking good," and he had a really good like eye for it. He'd worked
Yeah,
with some other decent players. And then Natty played, and he obviously had his drawbacks and stuff like this, but overall, just like very decent player. And I was just like, wow, like, if this guy works in a structure, he's gonna be really fucking good. And I never tied to him to like any. You can ask him like. There was a period of time where, I mean, I'm sure he wouldn't mind me leaking this. He was the second choice for Giant X Academy going into the Iberian Cup. I want to say it's the Iberian Cup where they played with Time.
Yeah,
They chose Time over him, and I think Time might. I don't think Time even stayed there, but it was just a thing where I was just like, wow. Like, and there's also another org that tried to take him in LFL recently, but they ended up. I think Natty wasn't interested by that point. And now Natty's at a point where like he just wants to stream. He's blown up streaming. He's got like 10k viewers. He's rank one, and I'm just here like, this kid is so fucking good. Like people can have their opinions and maybe like I think like he didn't perform like amazingly well when he played in the NLC most recently against LR and teams like this. But that's a kid with like so much raw talent. And my thing is like if Velia can get that good under Cadrill, Natty can do that, if not more. That's my personal opinion. So it's like how many kids like that are like 18 years old, cracked, they can get really high in solo queue, but they might just go and stream now instead of going pro because it's just so much better. Like I can't,
yeah,
I really want Natty to give it a go and go LEC, but I can't like be like to him go and do it. He's doing what he's doing. It's so much better for him, you know.
yeah. And I also think people overestimate the gap that actually exists between being a natural talented player and playing in the sea. I mean, look at Poby. Look at how much blowback we got about how bad he is, about how he wasn't cut it, and then we went to words with him, right? This, I think mechanical skill, like, of course, the top players, they stand out mechanically as well. But I think that it's way rarer than people think. I think, especially if you look at LEC, the most games lost are not because of mechanical misplays, because people play bad as a team. Like the macro is bad. You could slot in any Challenger 1 KLP player into the slot, and the team fight probably looked the same. For a big portion of games, I think. Um, but obviously, also I understand that with franchising, a lot of money, job security, um, it's harder to justify going for younger players, especially if there's an academy, right? Um, I repeat that point a lot, but I think it's just really important for the region at some point to have either back to an academy system or at least like in essence, I like the idea of the Winter Cup thingy where two AL teams can play, but I just really don't get the point of limiting it to those two. Why not just make it an FA Cup? Why not have every LEC team, because you're franchising teams, you seeded in round 5, let's say? Let every team apply that wants to
I
apply.
think an FA Cup would be so good, and you'd also have it like be a thing where it's like you give media rights to teams. So it's like the thing with the FA Cup in real life in the Premier League is like if like some random fucking National League team makes it to like the first round, they get like 200 grand from like media rights, and like that literally saves that club. Like they're literally like you have clubs that are going to like the first round draw, and they're like praying they get a Premier League team because they know they'll get
Yeah.
battered 9-0, but they're gonna get like the sponsor rights from it and stuff like that, and that like literally could like save a club from like denouement and stuff like this.
Yeah.
I think it'd be
But
such a good thing
also,
to do.
I think it adds another layer of storytelling that we as humans just enjoy, right? We all dream of the from rags to riches, the young talent that stands against unbelievable odds and wins the game. Like, just let the team, like, LEC teams are so terrified of losing a game because, of course, like, oh, we pay this big money for it. I understand it, right? We open this Pandora's box of franchising, but I think as we would have so many more viewers over long term if we have a guy in the Winter Cup, his team loses, but he goes 5-0 against Fnatic. What a player! Like, oh my god, who is this kid actually?
Streets won't forget,
I
and
think,
then that player probably can get to LEC easier as well. Like
yeah, and then there's a storyline. I mean, next time he goes a bit further and people are interested in him. But we just don't create this. Instead, we have franchising game number 100 repeated and in a best of one round robin in Spring Split.
I also think there's a thing where it's like with the teams that are afraid to lose to ERL teams, it's going to be a big deal, and it's going to feel like shit the first time. But like if you just do it, then like no one's going to care. Like obviously, like in football, like who was it that upset someone in chat? Remind me, who is it that beat Man United in the EFL or FA, where Ruben Amorim was like, he looked like you GrabbZ to be fair at Worlds. He had his playbook open. He looked like he was playing Connect Four in a little fucking book. That's
I think Grimsby Tower, no? The one against Man U.
Grimsby. Yeah. Like, sorry, I forget what my point was going to be. Like, obviously, when something like that happens, Man United gets slated on social media, but we're more used to it now. But it's like if the more that that's kind of stuff happens, I remember being an Arsenal fan in like the 2010s. It's like it felt like every 2 years we were losing to like a fucking Grimsby Town. It's just life. Like that was just Arsene Wenger's thing. Like Arsene Wenger's thing was that he would just field a load of kids in the FA Cup, and we would lose to like
Yeah,
fucking crew, like Blythe Spartans or like crew or something. That's just life. Like I feel like
yeah,
if we did something like that in LEC, fucking you'd get over it after a while, right?
yeah. And also, then if the big argument is the walls qualification spot, then okay, then block them from going there. Whatever. I think an EL team that wins the cup already got so much, but just being there and winning it, that I think preemptively saying they can't go to Worlds, sure, whatever. Like your franchising teams, you paid your millions, cool. It is what it is, right? But I think we could create so many more storylines. We could actually create bonds between fans and players to a higher degree again. Because if you think back, like who are the most popular streamers or players are these people that were in the beginning that have played when it felt more natural, organic than this polished product we have now. And bless the broadcaster doing what they can, especially now with co-streaming also being rampant. But I think the orgs also, it's so hard because I'm part of an org, so I have to be careful. But I think every LSC org is doing a subpar job in terms of like making you interested about the players. Like, if I take an example that org will be angry at me. Like, player X is a promising rookie. Cool, he plays good. I know nothing about him. Like, how many LSC players do you actually know? What is their favorite food? What's their family like? Is there like an interesting story? Do they do sports? What human being is it? We don't know.
No, I think this is to kind of to take the heat off of you a little bit here. I think it was a testament to like I think I got a lot better at interviewing after like maybe a year. I think 2024 is really where I started getting good. But my interviews were getting a lot of attention in 2023, and I don't think I was that good. I was all right, but one of the main reasons was that people were like, "Oh my God, this is like." I remember I did an interview with Yike at MSI 23, and the general sentiment I got from that on Twitter, Reddit, and the YouTube comments was, "This is the most I've learned about Yike this year." And
Yeah.
like that's no shade to G2. I love all the guys at G2 content. Know all of them. Spoken to them. Good guys. If they're not completely, if they're not bossing that as a job, then what the fuck is everyone else going to be able to do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We've arrived at a destination now where yeah, like I think that for me that's like what I find one of my main utilities to be when I do interviews. It's just like, well, I have the mindset of like, how do I make you come across as interesting as possible? That's like kind of the research. Um, I think content is very lackluster in general across esports. I think we have a very like ADHD magpie syndrome where it's just like anything that appears to be even a semblance of anything good is immediately celebrated, and the pedestal that like the mediocre is put on means that the general standards are
Yeah.
dropped to such an extent that it's impossible to actually celebrate any kind of growth and moving forward. That's like a major problem I
Yeah.
have in esports. It doesn't just apply to content, it applies to a lot of things I see. It's like because the status quo is so heavily protected in a safety of mediocrity that when things are slightly above that or they ebb maybe 0.1% above that kind of ebb and flow, it's venerated and elevated to such an extent that it almost it serves as a distraction tool away from what the reality of the wider context is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm gonna say it like a bit polemic, but we live in an era of and I forgot the word. Oh my god, parasocialism.
Mm.
Like people are desperate to connect with a personality they like. Give them fodder to do so. Like it sounds kind of predatory, but it's not more predatory than any co-streamer or any streamer itself. Or like, oh, give me €5 and I shout your name in a tone of voice that makes you feel like I love you. Like that's how streaming works. That's how social media currently works, right? That is why I think the broadcast is a harder time
Just to
compared to
clarify,
co-streamers
how
because
much would it cost for me to get something like that from you?
yeah, we can negotiate it off camera.
Cool.
I'm fine with
Can
that.
you give us like a little like test? Just like, can you just say I love you to?
No,
Okay, no,
no,
not feeling it.
no.
Sorry, carry on.
I don't have this emotion in me. I'm German.
Okay, fair enough.
Um, um, can't complain. I think this is the highest compliment I can give you. But yeah, I think we have more avenues to explore to make fans interested in the player's journey. but I think franchising makes it hard. I think the current league system makes it hard.
You know what a major
Uh,
problem is that no one really talks about, and this is a point that I've raised a few times before, is that the famous content format that's always done really well that actually takes into account what you're talking about, the parasocialism and giving an inside view, is a format that someone at Fnatic popularized. There's Danny Lopez, I think, who invented the Fnatic series. Is it Fnatic Legends? Someone in chat will know. Is it, guys? Fnatic Legends, is that the name of it? The series that was like behind the scenes weekly episodes about Fnatic, something like this. Yeah, and then obviously TSM did a series as well, but it's originally inspired by the Fnatic one. They kind of got the idea from that. Obviously, it's a zeitgeist you can respond to. It's not like
yeah.
a super original idea. The problem is with something like this, and you see it as a problem in TSM Legends, I think is what it was called, is that if you do a show like that and it's not like almost a mockumentary in some ways, you're entirely at the whims of, like, for example, TSM Legends is good in the beginning because Reggie is like a complete cunt. And it's like, that's not actually a variable that you want to have as like a betting variable. It shouldn't be like, well, good job our CEO's a cunt because we can make good content. It's like a lot of content is made, and for example, like Team Liquid Breaking Point or stuff like this. And I would be concerned, for example, over the last couple of years, maybe even before you were there, if you were to do another series like that about Fnatic, how much of that would like come back badly on people involved because people are not able to like actually like fully evaluate things in context. I even remember like there
Yeah.
was a Mad Lions thing they did where El Yoyo was like pissed off after a game and everyone was just like, is El Yoyo the second coming of Satan? How is he so annoyed after they lost that game? So it's like a thing
Yeah.
where like a lot of these content insights are like plotted against variables that aren't necessarily conducive to like positivity within teams, and that makes it quite difficult because how interesting is for the absolute like slop eating like pigs of demonic chaos that is the consumer, how interesting is we all love each other. I think I've only seen one example of like fans who are really positive in that regard. It's the Fnatic Valorant fans actually. They really like it. They really like how like um implicatorily implied homoerotic the relationship is between like Boaster and Crashies. That's like a really cute thing that parasocially people get involved in that. It's an interest. It's similar to like a K-pop thing. They're like, these two men love each other in like a really that are they friends or something even worse? Like, do you know what I mean? Like that's like that happens in Fnatic Valorant at least, but like in League, I feel like it's a way different palette. You'd have to recontextualize the palette completely because it's like people want to see heads come off.
I mean that's just the human nature, right? Sex sells and disaster sells. That's just how it goes. But I think you can still create a baseline of interest in the personalities if you actually give the fans a chance to interact. Let's say, for example, the interview we're having right now. Why is it so hard for an org? Okay, preseason, season's going to start, and then, hey, let's have each player for 1 hour with the fans in chat.
Mm.
Ask them a question. How was your childhood? What is your favorite food? What is the last movie you enjoyed? What makes you play the game? Give them avenues to explore this, right? I'm also someone I don't like content, but I understand the value behind it. Right? I
But do
can
you
do
not
this
like
job
do you not like content because most of the content you get asked to do is like not amazing?
as well. It plays into it, but also I just don't like being in the center of attention anyways. I don't like have a camera in my face. I'm also a person I don't like if I have other friends and they take their phones to picture the food and show like, oh guys, we're outside. I hate that. Like I despise just this entire like need of setting yourself to the outside world that we're living in right now. Um, but I'm also very well aware of the fact that I can do this as a job because enough of you want to watch this shit. Like I'm really aware of this, right? So I can't sit here, have Fnatic pay me this much money, and then be like, no, not doing content. I don't care about the fans. That's not how it works. Um, and I think first of all, it's on us to educate the players in that regard and make sure that they understand why it's important. But then also explore these avenues a bit more. I think we don't, as a fan of, as well as I don't think you want this hyper polished hero piece for 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be always this way, right? But just create an organic avenue where you can actually just meet a human. Um,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. Like I don't think it would be necessary if we had a more open competitive system, because then the storylines of a team winning when they shouldn't, that will carry the entire
I really loved, like, do you remember like
from itself.
the features they used to do? And for what it's worth, actually, I want to give a shout out briefly to the Riot features team at Worlds. One of the main guys on it, I forget his name. I hate that I've forgotten his name. I've had dinner with him, amongst other people. He's a South African guy. He's fucking incredible. The features teams at Worlds, if you guys watch like the shorts and Instagram content they do, those guys are fucking great. But I really liked. Do you remember back in like 2013, the features they used to do would just be like, "Oh, it's Valentine's Day. We're gonna hear from Diamond Prox and his wife," and like all of these different things would be like the feature with like the
Yeah,
players and girlfriends, and like they had a whole thing where it's like I forget. I remember other things. It's like the thing where they all played football. There's that one famous thing. There's like a video of like loads of players playing football, like Reckless and all these other guys. I'd love
yeah.
to see more stuff like this, where it's just like features tied to calendar events or just things like this where I just get more of an understanding of the players. It feels like
It- it-
nowadays the only thing we had like that was when Shakara's did the pop quiz, and that doesn't even exist anymore.
yeah. And I feel just in general, the ADC, or let's say pro gaming itself, and I'm implicating myself in there as well. I'm also guilty. It feels like we're like a different entity hovering on a holy grounds above the rest of the league player base sometimes. Like
Mm.
we're so detached from the normal player base that are our fans that we are connected to, and no one wants to do content anymore. We feel like always just like, oh, who's this random, like what pro players say, right? But then create a system where this random can actually just stomp you one day. You're like, oh wait, this is not a random. I actually lost an official game against them, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think this will just make so many things better, not only competitively but also just engagement wise. Because now we're like in this black hole of, okay, what happens if we stop cross streaming again? Do we lose all the fans? How will it develop? We don't know.
Coast
Um,
streaming is a complete like Frankenstein's monster, isn't it? It's alive now. You
yeah,
can't just like pretend it doesn't exist.
exactly. It's
Uh,
in the room now. We have to live with it, and we will see, like, I guess, in 2 or 3 years what actually
my biggest
is the
problem,
implication.
my biggest problem with content that I see people do is that there's just such obsession with like the complete like tragedy boner. Like, do you remember I really love a lot of the LCS Drive series, and if anyone who works on that sees this, like, please take what I'm saying into context. It,
The
um,
Maso piece is so good, by the way. The one they
that's
did
actually
in
the one I was
Amsterdam.
gonna. That's the one I was gonna criticize. I think that
Really?
I think all of those are really fucking great. If it's like it, but it's the only thing that exists like out there for me to learn about players. If I want to learn about a player, I've got to watch like a thing about like what was the Contracts' thing? It was something to do with like prescription addiction in the family or something like this, and then like Masu's like fleeing from like a war-torn country or like someone else. It's just like this is all amazing, but it's like why is there such a? It feels like we're almost these are really good stories and important stories to tell, but I'm very facetiously evaluative in how I interpret the fact that these are the main stories being told. Because it feels
Oh,
like
I
we're
get.
Hollywoodifying personal tragedy because we think that's what like sells in terms of stories. Because we're not confident enough to
Yeah,
sell
for sure.
stories that aren't like that don't just tell themselves, is my point.
It's like the talent show where the person, before they go on stage, they cry because they lost their dad 2 months ago, and he wanted him to be a singer, and now he's on stage trying his best to
Well,
reach
it's
a
just kind of,
goal.
it's more just like imagine I'm a player and like I walk into like this tell-all interview. They're doing this new series where like I do this interview, and I'm there to like talk about like my journey and like how I stole the Baron against like owner last night and like we made it and like all of this kind of shit. And they sit me down and they go, "So your dad used to hit you?" And I'm just there like, well, yeah, but like I don't want to fucking talk about.
Yeah,
It's like great, but there's other, and not to say that those stories, like the Massey thing, is a great story, and I'm sure he was on board with it, and it's an important thing to say. I'm not
yeah,
criticizing the P's. It's more about the fact that there's not other things. We over rely on that, like in the context of what else is out there. I have a problem with it.
yeah. But I think that's just the evolution of how we as humans consume media at the moment, right? With social media, with the internet. Um, I don't think that's an esports endemic issue.
I don't think it's a problem with consumption because I actually think it is endemic to esports somewhat because there is a real problem in esports in terms of process and intention. And you see this in the fact that, like, dude, can I just address the elephant in the room? Has anyone seen Giant X's YouTube channel where they just completely copy Jubilee formats and, like, guess the rank of the player? Maybe not now, but those videos are fucking botted as fuck. I remember watching some of those videos. They had like 800k views. We're talking like 400 likes and 5 comments. Botted as fuck. There are some other orgs out there. This is a call out to some of you. GrabbZ is like pretend. I'm gonna turn your camera off for this one, GrabbZ. So like, if it gets
No,
clipped, you're
no,
not.
don't.
I'm gonna say if it gets clipped, you're not even here. Some of you orgs out there, you are botting your YouTube channel, and I have taken notice, and there is action is coming. I'm going to start taking the piss out of all of you very soon. But no, my point is, in terms of intention and algorithm, when you look at the process, it was a really interesting conversation I was having with Max Waldo. So Max Waldo went from being the coach of Cloud9, and he now works in kind of YouTube algorithms. He works with people that are quite closely connected to some of the biggest YouTube channels from the perspective of how do we tweak this thumbnail, how do we tweak this title, how do we like SEO this, how do we optimize this video, and the science of YouTube basically. And talking to him
Mhm.
about it because he comes from esports, he's just like it's so different how people approach content in esports because if you're intentional about algorithms and stuff like this, then there is an aspect of it which derides and erodes creativity because it suddenly becomes how do we optimize this to like people being watching things. So it's like you do less passion
Mm.
projects. But even then, at least you're optimizing it for the viewership. What we have in esports is that there are no passion projects, and even in the things that are in theory zeitgeist responsive aren't optimized at all. So it's just like empty on both sides. That's a
Yeah, I agree.
relatively endemic esports thing because
I agree.
there are no like experts in regards to content in esports in that way. Like even some of the people at these orgs like they don't do a massively good job at this.
Okay, I can see that. I do agree.
Cool. I think that pretty much. But I don't really want to talk too much about content anymore. We've kind of spoken about coaching philosophy. We've spoken about problems in the market. We've spoken about content. We've spoken about players. I want to talk about Fnatic now, if that's all right with you. You've been there for a while. It's been a campaign for you, which obviously you've managed to still keep up the legacy of making it to Worlds. But it'd be fair to say, I mean, you had your kind of I remember I was watching your post-season kind of breakdown. Was that after LEC finals, I believe? When you did the stream where you were answering questions from the fans. It was before Worlds, I'm pretty sure.
I did one afterwards as well. Depends which one you mean. I think
Okay, in any case, but
the
I've
one with
watched.
Gags was afterwards.
Oh yeah. That was the one. Yeah. God, wow, time fucking passes. In any case, it's been a campaign where you have by no means minced words, but potentially not been 100% clear because you're in the middle of the season. That was a big thing when you were saying, I'm in the middle of the season, we're not going to talk about too much. I kind of wanted to give you an
Yeah.
opportunity to kind of take the conversation in any direction you wanted. Some of the problems you face, some of the challenges, with also in consideration for some of the great achievements and the journey, because the thing that people don't appreciate often is that even though things might have been really fucking difficult on Fnatic and you might have faced all these things, in spite of those things, you still achieved the goal of making it to Worlds, and that must have come at great encumbrance and great coming together and great efforts at some capacity, right?
In some capacity as well. I know what you're getting at as well, but ultimately we ended the year trying to chant for a title, and we ended third for a third. So I wouldn't mince words here. Like it was a failure of a year for the org.
Okay.
I think it's a good end to go to Worlds, but it's not the the level we hold ourselves to, or I want to achieve with the team. Um, so I think no one can be happy, or should be happy, just because the ending was good. Ultimately, the ending was good because we won best of five, right? That's ultimately what happened. That's how the system worked. If you win against KC, we go to Worlds, and you might have the notion of the year is good. If you lose that one, the year is an absolute disaster. So I'm very well aware of that. And obviously, as a head coach, like a lot of this falls onto me, which is why we're like in a process right now trying to make it better next year. And that's all we can say to that.
But it's fair to say, I mean, I'm going to push you slightly on this, and you give me whatever kind of wall you want to offer here. You're saying responsibility falls on you as a coach, but obviously Fnatic is an organization that kind of has dipped into it seems like whoever arrives there falls into kind of a myriad like maze of potential issues. And obviously, you're someone that's come and you've arrived to this, and potentially you're inheriting problems that have already existed. I wonder if you could comment on that in a way that's fair to all parties, because when issues like
Yeah.
that arise, it's down to so many contextual factors that it's rarely someone's fault entirely. So I wondered if you could talk about that in a way that doesn't devolve blame to one person, but potentially speaks to a wider stratum that might have developed over the last couple of years.
I think it's fair to say that the entire construct Fnatic League of Legends is not structured in a way that is optimized for performance. Let's just say that. I think I can give an example. Not having the sports psychologist in the beginning of the year, I think, is a big issue. Especially we had players that have known issues when it comes to topics like anxiety or just performance wise. I think there are some oversights there that are being made, which are being addressed at least. I think Fnatic, at least to my criticism, is very responsive, which I really appreciate. So I can feel the trust they give me there. But ultimately, that's just the boring truth, right? That we have a team of 5 players, 3 coaches, in some a performance coach that tried to win, and we all had a fair share of issues and mistakes with it along the line. It's hard to put the blame on one specific thing. I think one thing that I really don't like in not only esports but in life it's in general, but I think it was a big issue in this team is if you don't take responsibility not only for your mistakes but your just own actions in life. I think I think life is too short to not be the protagonist of your own life, to not take action, to make decisions actively, to try to bring your own decisions forward. And I think we had too many people in the team or surrounding the team that were just happy being along for the ride and not trying to pull their own weight or trying to lead the ship to better waters. And this is always what you see in these post worlds or post season documentaries. People are like, I wish we would have worked harder a bit earlier. Like this sentiment is carried a lot in esports, especially, right? Where these are usually people who, in the day to day, are happy just being there. And when pressed, are like, I don't have an opinion. I don't really mind. Like these sentiments are the ones that I hate the most in esports, or like in sports itself. Because I feel like if you're an NDC, by default, you're a top 50 player in your region. Take some pride in that, and that should mean have an opinion of how you want to play the game.
I
I am
want to.
here because I'm good. I want to play it this way. Give the opinion. Don't just sit there and be like, yeah, I'm fine with whatever.
Okay, cool. We'll get back to that because that's interesting. I wanted to add a counter here because I think in playing devil's advocate, it will potentially illuminate the situation more. Ralph Rangnick, when he came into Manchester United, described Manchester United as needing an open heart surgery. That was the famous line that was
Yeah.
quoted. And there's an interesting kind of verbal diatribe constantly at war with each other in terms of the pundits will say, you'll get like a Roy Keane or someone like that on Sky Sports, and they'll say the players don't work hard enough. You're at Man United, you should be more prideful, like you're saying. But then the other side of it is, you'll have someone like Ronaldo come to Old Trafford and just be like, "What's going on here? The structure is done." Like, of course, the players, and you have this eternal thing of the players aren't trying hard enough, and then you go, "Well, they're not trying hard enough because they're giving enough. They're giving up because of the environment." Is that not a fair recompense or potentially go back at what you're saying? Because you're talking about potentially you need players fully committed throughout the year, but the argument that made the other way. I mean, obviously you say they have to be professional, but how many of these players are potentially just not giving up, but like they're not fully able to give it their all because of things that are happening in the beginning of the year, and it wears them down over the course of the year.
Yeah, possibly for sure. I can see that. Again, as I mentioned myself, right? Not every process in Fnatic runs smoothly. Certain things could be better. And these are the things that the org themselves have to answer to. But that's again what I just mentioned, right? Is that I can say that the org could have done better or players could have done better, but ultimately all I can answer to is my actions, and I'm reflecting on my actions over this year and what actions I want to take next year, right? And I think I want to surround myself with people with a similar mindset, basically, because strongly believe that if you have many individuals who want to be their best version, who take responsibility in who they are, then they have enough capacity to also look left and right and help each other out to reach um, everyone's best version, right? And I think the org side of things are important, but I think that's the last 5-10%. And I think we had a lot more to show as individuals, as the 5 players and 3 coaches before that. Would it have helped? For sure. But
Hmm.
I don't think it's even close to being the main factor.
Not in an attempt to play a gotcha, and similarly, if you want to respond in any way that wrangles out of what the presumed net is, but it would be remiss of me as a journalist to not pick up on you saying that you want to surround yourself with people with a similar mindset next year. And obviously, a noted departure during this off-season rumored is the alleged departure of Mickey X to SK Gaming. Would it be fair to say that potentially he doesn't share the same mindset with you in that capacity, or
I
potentially
mean,
that was a problem?
you can ask him tomorrow if he feels that every day he put in
I'd
his best
rather I'd
version.
rather ask you and then get his comment tomorrow, if that's okay.
No, I don't think he put his best every day. I think he could have done a better job. As I said, we all share a bird there. But this is something I taught him during the season as well, that he is the most winning and most tenured player on the team. And with that should come a certain responsibility, and he either had a different interpretation or just didn't feel or just couldn't fill that spot. And right, it's also a thing of personality. I can't put a gun to Mickey's head and say be a leader now for the team. That doesn't work, right? But to be fair, on this spot, also allegedly, it is also his decision then to part ways. It's not about me being angry at him and pushing him out. There are other factors there. But yeah, I think Mickey could have done more, and I could have done more, and I think he will tomorrow agree with it if you ask him. But I mean, in a team environment, it's always a certain thing, right? Is that there's only so much abuse a relationship can take, and abuse in a way of also trusting each other, believing in the project, believing in the chance of being good. And certain different players have different bars they want to reach. For example, Mickey is a player. If he can't be the first, he does not care. If he's second or eighth, but he wants to be the best. As I said before, like congrats to going to Worlds. I think I know it's important for the org. It's a nice tangent for me to be back, but I don't care. I didn't win. That's how I look back at the season. Right? I don't think I went to Worlds at the end. I think I did not win a single split. So therefore, it was a shit season. And the more different views we have in that regard, the more tension there's in the team, and the harder it becomes for everybody to give their best because they don't feel understood and they feel a bit isolated in their own approach towards performance and perfection. And I think Mickey was someone who had like a very different view of what it means to be good or what it means to have a satisfying day. And I think that also meant that over time, like what I'm saying that Mickey could have done more, it doesn't mean since Winter Split he was just coasting, right? That's not what I'm implying here. But
Well, that's
everybody
sort of the
has like a
question I
different.
was raising. Did it wear down over time?
I think so, but that does happens in every team, right? Like if you think actually, if you look back at every summer split, usually the team that wins the split is the team that just survives the shit show that's the summer. Like there are so many band-aids on every team at that point in time, just hoping to one more week, guys, don't kill each other yet. There's a chance still. And then you hold on to your hope and then crumbles just because again, we have not always control about the whole roster, because financial reasons, because contact reasons, all the jazz. And it is really, really rare to have not only 5 players, but also then 5 players and coaches that actually have the same view on how the day-to-day should run, what the expectations are, what is the minimum that you want to achieve to be satisfied, because that's also a big difference, right? Like you can tell as a human being if, let's say, one player really wants to go to Worlds, but you want to win the split. And you win that game, and you can feel the tension drop of someone else. Like, no, maybe not consciously, but subconsciously, there's a shift in attitude, right? And that can impact you in your performance. That's why it's so important to align on the vision. It's almost like a buzz phrase you hear a lot, right? But it is vital.
Synergy, I think, is the word they use.
Yeah. Because also, let's face it, like we're as much as I'm criticizing players and the whole franchise and whatever, we are moving in the top 0.001% of league players in Europe. Right? So these things matter a lot. Right? We are long gone from the times, at least in Europe, where like one player dominates just by being himself. Like you can even argue like Faker, the greatest of all time. 10 years ago, he just won every matchup because he's Faker. That's just what it was, right? He could play whatever he wants. He wins the matchup. He's Faker. He wins. The game has evolved from that, and now just more about the minute details and having the same vision, the synergy, not only in game but out of game, impacts a lot. And if you feel the tension there from winter split, spring split, then a bad scrim game, a bad discussion, and then suddenly you just get worn down basically.
You talked there
I
about
think
you talked about there kind of an insight as to one of the difficulties on Fnatic in the last year being a lack of alignment in terms of, I don't know what the best way of putting it would be, but potentially hunger. You talked about like Mickey there, for example. It's a thing of, if we're not first, the difference between second and eighth is not relevant to me, and therefore the effort will be reflected in that, or potentially the drive and the hunger. If there's a misalignment, I potentially, singling out or not singling out, whatever kind of anecdotal personal evidence you want to give for it, whatever you're comfortable with. I wanted to maybe ask about where the alignment was potentially for some of these other players in regards to their hunger, their drive, their attitude towards it. Because it sounds like that he wasn't the only. I think it's unfair to only talk about him.
No, absolutely. It's just Mickey because he's the allegedly or like closest to leaving.
Sure,
Um, the thing is also alignment, of course, is a spectrum, right?
hmm,
You can't align 100% as a person.
sure.
But
But
we
it's
had like
about
very
cohesion within a spectrum.
exactly. Just imagine like you have branches that can branch out, haha, and like you can put a rubber band around them. But of course, the more they branch out left and right, the more pressures on the rubber band at some point it snaps.
Yeah,
So
it's a good way
also
of
in
looking
that
at it.
regard, there's not one person at fault. No approach by itself is wrong because in their own way, I still believe they wanted to win. It's not the way that I want to improve every day. It's not the way I want to work. But I do believe that everybody in this organization, in this team, wants the best for each other, right? Um, so there was, of course, misalignment and alignments. I think, um, how do I say it? I have to be a bit careful here, right? Because it's not only about me being like cagey about obviously stuff. It's
No, of
also
course.
I really do not feel like I don't want to put or like create narratives about the player or
Hmm,
coach or something,
for sure.
which happens a lot. I mean, I'm the victim of that my entire career, right? So I'm very cautious of that. Which I'm aware makes it a bit wishy washy what I'm saying in most times, but that's just the cost of it. Um, are there relationships in the team that I think are not repairable for next year? Yes, and that's also why we're working on, and these are like the starting points of the new roster for next year. Did we try to like close or isolate in worlds? Yes, also we tried to do that. But that's not a Fnatic thing. It's just I think yeah, every team and every sport has it. I think just in Fnatic the pressure is a bit different because I mean it's a storied org, and whatever you do, you're on a magnifying glass, right? So I think that's a bit of a
Do
Fnatic
you
issue,
do you do
especially
you
with this
take that
rotation.
as the do you take that as the main reason? I mean, like famously, it's the thing of death tactics and a Fnatic worlds drama is traditionally sort of the narrative that people go with. What do you kind of do you pin that down to the nature of it being a storied organization, and kind of you have to be first, but potentially don't have the resources to do so, and that's what creates that kind of dissonance? Is that what you would put it down to? It's obviously difficult you arriving and having to view it as the full tapestry, but from what you can see upon landing,
Mm, I don't think that Fnatic has as an org more drama at worlds than other orgs have.
you just think it comes out
Um,
more often.
yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Um, I think it's also not an issue, a result of being still a very European org in communication. I think it's easier to avoid this if you only mainly communicate towards one language because the amount of people who realize what's happening is smaller. And I think it's easier to understand to circumvent these streams. I think of potential drama. Um, so yeah, I don't think I think the profiles of it happening like 3 years ago, 4 years ago are worse. Like the whole Adam and Upset drama, for example, right? These are big drama points, and I
Hmm.
think that's where the perception always is all Fnatic. But I don't think over the years that Fnatic necessarily attracts more drama than any other arcs.
That's fair. Maybe not drama is the right way of putting it, but I definitely think it's fair to say that there's always a presumed idea that things are not all well behind the scenes at Fnatic, even if we don't hear anything. And then maybe that is sometimes reflected in little things that come out either via interview or stuff like this. I suppose that's more what my question was geared towards. Is that a result of the immense pressure that it is to be that organization? Um, would be more due to my question, because I think you are right in
Yeah,
putting it down to drama completely. It makes it sound like it's a slightly different question.
yeah. I think the points are being found faster and more blown up just because we have a non-negligible amount of people that want to see us blow up, that are waiting each year to like hate watch us. Which, by the way, I think it's great. It's full of passion. Like I think this is good. The opposite of love isn't hate; it's indifference, right? So I
Interesting.
think it's good that we have people that want to see us fail, but that also means that also sometimes the narratives just run away. Sometimes we know it's a non-issue, but suddenly it's a red thread. Suddenly it's a 2,000 upvotes, 500 comments, and now it's narrative. I mean, you work in the space as well. You know firsthand that on any given subject or any given person, the first impression is what matters. That's just how the scene works, right? And if something happens, and let's say we both, for 5 minutes, have a fight here, afterwards we go drink a beer, that clip circulates though, and then
Mm.
you for sure have a high number of people who say DonJake hates GrabbZ. And it doesn't matter how many people say, no, wait, they went for a beer afterwards. They will still have this because it's
I
way
had
harder
this the other
to.
day. Dom tweeted a thing about NattyNat being like, DonJake replaced NattyNat and put himself in as jungle because I went and played jungle in NLC as a joke. And like it's a
Yeah,
great tweet, it's a joke, but like people actually now think that. So it's like great,
yeah.
wonderful.
The best example I can give is to this day still, and it pains me to say this, but the best jungler in the history of European League of Legends is Jankos. And for a long time,
Why does that pain you so much?
just because we have this relationship, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Martin will know.
I know.
But this whole like nearly spear thing, like at some point got its own legs. It started as a joke from G2 Esports, the Twitter account themselves. Like, aha, we're making fun of our players. Then it became a community thing, haha. But then new people get into community, they see this meme, and they don't have context. And afterwards, it has been a narrative that Jankos cannot play nearly. Is he Kanavi levels or like Canyon levels? No. But he was a good nearly. Like the guy was the first Blood King of Europe for a long time, right?
Yeah.
And that basically you can boil that down to like every talking point and to every little video snippet you can analyze basically. Like or like let's example the Yoya mid lines thing, right? To this day, there are still people who have this image of him because of these 10 seconds in the clip of him like being overly emotional, being like a dictator, blah blah blah. And
To be fair with that, it didn't help when he told me his favorite film was Whiplash because then I just believed all of it.
not my
That's like
tempo in the jungle, huh?
that's like the biggest red flag I've ever heard from anyone. Is not only that he said that his favorite film was Whiplash, but he also said he learned a lot from the film. Like he said that he like learned like his philosophy comes from Whiplash.
Do you think when his bot lane gets ganked, he's like, were you dragging or rushing?
Were you draking or rushing? That brings a new definition to not my tempo for sure.
You're
Oh,
trading not on my tempo and frost his hair. Okay, maybe.
oh God. If League was session music, what kind of music would it be? It's definitely not jazz. In Europe, it's not jazz.
Mm,
It
hmm.
might be similar to the music they play in Berlin, to be fair. It's similar to Kit Kat and Berghain, I think.
Brother, I love techno, so
I love
this
techno
energy
as
doesn't
well.
kill me.
I love techno as well.
Um, I love a good rave. Um,
You don't strike me as
up-
a raver. That's quite interesting.
oh, okay.
Okay,
I do.
we got to go out next time I'm in Berlin.
Yeah, sure, man.
Um,
Not in
that,
the Kit Kat. I'm not the
no,
freaky stuff necessarily,
I
but
wasn't offering it to that. That would be quite a
no.
forward. We've only just sat. This is the longest we've ever spoken. That would be quite
Yeah.
forward.
Bro, in Berlin, this would be normal. Like, you just meet a guy at the cafe or like a girl at the cafe when I go somewhere, sure. But no. Like, we can go to Club Ost or RSL. These are the two I always recommend.
Sounds good. Who are the best people in esports to party with in your opinion that you think wouldn't mind you saying it about them?
I mean, the scene went to weekend in Berlin for a long time, so I think none. I don't know anyone that.
So you're the party animal
Uh,
of LEC.
I mean, I'm one of the few that listens to techno, and I think I'm the one of the few ones who can go on a bender and have a good time.
Listen, me, you, Sam Matthews. Sam, he doesn't like techno though. He plays like he's a pretty good DJ though. I'm not gonna lie. I was with him at the Fnatic Valorant event, and I was watching him DJ. Sam Matthews is so funny. I went and did Rich's and Nymira's show yesterday, and Rich was telling a story about Sam Matthews about a party they were at in 2017 where Sam Matthews just walked in and like kicked the DJ off and then started DJing. And then I was like, that's so funny you just told me that because he did the same thing last night, 8 years later. Like he literally just DJ on and I saw him and I was like, let's go back to back. And he went and kicked off the DJ. We were DJing and I was watching him while he was doing it. This guy knows how to use like fade out filters. He's like looping his transition and then doing the fade out filter. Like he's a pro. Like
Okay.
he knows what he's doing. He's not playing any techno. But anyway, we've gone on a massive tangent here. What were we talking about before?
Good
You were
question,
you were
actually.
talking about narratives with players. You were talking
Oh
about
yeah.
with Yankos and stuff like this,
Oh yeah.
and how
And also,
yeah.
yeah, like wine fanatic, it's a bigger issue. I think it's just because we have more people, like more eyes on us, and more people willing to like create a narrative. And then that's also why I do this entire like press conference thing, because obviously, and that's not a secret, right? It helps to create a narrative yourself,
Hmm.
right? I want to make sure that there is no narrative that runs out of control to a certain way that's, of course, controlling. And I will, of course, say certain things that make my players look better or make situations look better. That's just part of what I mean why PR exists.
What do you think was the narrative about you from the G2 era? Because it was a good narrative at G2. You leave G2, you go to BDS. What do you think is the main prevailing thing about you that you wanted to set right, and what was the main
Uh,
desire? Because I remember bumping into
yeah.
you in Munich in the expo, and we talked about you coming back to coaching, and you talking about wanting to come back and why you wanted to do it. And I was sort of opinion like, well, yeah, it's great, but like, how's he going to get his shot? It's going to be so difficult. I thought your position was so difficult, as a lot of people probably did. What was the
Yeah.
main thing you wanted to prevail against, a narrative you wanted to set correct?
Not really because I don't care enough about it. I had to learn, especially after BDS, that orgs care about it. So, like after BDS, I didn't have a job because teams just assumed I retired because I didn't do content. So that's why I also started co-streaming stuff. So I personally, I'm too old to like fight against anything. What the one thing that still gets to me a bit, what annoys me, is the whole facilitator thing. Like, he just there to manage people. And in the same sentence, they talk about other coaches in the league where as if they have twice the amount of game knowledge that I have, which that annoys me to a certain degree because people don't know what I actually do. Um, I don't necessarily think there's a head coach who knows a lot more than I do. But obviously, this was a G2 narrative, right? Where, yes, I had insane players that I didn't have to control as much as other teams would have to do.
Do you think on G2 it was
But
more of a thing of you had the knowledge, but it's like, well, I'm gonna let them speak because maybe they have.
um, well, I also learned a lot there, obviously. Um, it's not like I became better every year I was in G2, that's a fact. But there was still
I'm also
certain.
meant it's a thing with on G2 where it's like, I'm gonna let the players speak because it might be the best way to win, but then that's interpreted as you maybe knowing less and being more of a facilitator. But the knowledge was there the entire time.
In most areas, yeah. Again, I wouldn't say that I was the complete package, of course
Okay.
not. I learned a lot, especially about side laning in G2, for sure. Um, but I mean, every year we try to evolve, right? Every coach tries to improve either by watching other leagues, by just thinking, or by talking to people. I think that's a normal process. And I'm not trying to make myself look like the macro genius, right? I just think um, that stamp that I have on my head will never go away. I learned of that. I learned to
You
live
seem
with that.
like one of the things I've kind of acknowledged about you when I've watched interviews with you, or just general comms, especially because one of the things I've noticed you do on Twitter nowadays on Fnatic, which I think you did before, but definitely to a more of an extent now, is this kind of you very much play, you do these kind of, you're doing press conferences on Twitter. In the absence of an actual press conference, it's quite often a thing of like accountability falls on me. You're answering questions from fans. A fan will be like, why the fuck did you pick this GrabbZ? And it'd be like, listen, my friend, there are factors at play here beyond the consideration of what is currently available. Like, you're very diplomatic in that way. And so in that way, what I can infer from that, you seem a lot more stately than you used to be in some regards. What does that come from? Does that come from more of an idea of wanting to be more the idea of the head coach? Because obviously in football, there's a lot more diplomacy. You hear stories about, Ferguson selection, it being a thing of, you got to go, you got to go around things in a different way. Whereas maybe when you were a coach, maybe a couple of years ago, 6 years ago, it was more about I'm here to do drafts, bring ideas, and and adhere to kind of the general strategy of the team. Is there more of a role for you in terms of man management now? I know that potentially adds to the facilitator narrative, but it seems like there's more of a package to you nowadays.
I don't think I consciously shifted in that regard. I think in G2 times I also took the blame. I think to a degree that's always the coach's job. It's also because I consider myself a lot more mature than players by age and by experience. So if someone has to go through hate messages, death threats to a degree, it should be me, just because I can deal with it better than players can. So that's the first step. Um, so I don't. I mean, maybe it shifted, but I think that I always try to put myself out there. Um,
I
to
mean, more so.
control
I
and
mean,
to
more
be the
so.
outlet.
I'm not saying there's a change to putting yourself out there because I think that already existed. But I think that the fact that I'm seeing the tweets more often maybe speaks to me that potentially there's been a, and it can also come from just being a bit older, right? You're 6 years older than you were then. Is it the
Yeah.
case that you're more so kind of a, how much have you shifted to being, how much more in common do you have with a football manager nowadays than you did maybe 6 years ago?
Oh yeah. I mean, a lot more experience does a lot to you, right? Also perspective shift of. I think now, of course, if you say I truly understood against the shift, but I really, really mean it when I say I understand when fans are angry and hateful, because ultimately they invest one of the most important commodities we have as human beings, their time, into what we're doing. So to a certain degree, they are entitled to having an answer. I
Mm,
can think, oh my god, you're so fucking stupid what you're saying here. This tweet is absolutely our word, and I want to flame you, but ultimately you do this because you care about what we're doing. And I'm aware that I am the spokesperson because I am the pixel grabs. That's a collection of your team. And I think just I have a deeper understanding of that, also on a human level of like how this works and what it means to people. That I have a easier time just interacting without taking it personal. Because yeah, I mean back then I was 24, right? I think that is a very young age to deal with this. Um, that's also something that like we should never forget. These are young people. There are some very freaky messages coming into certain players. I remember like one time even in G2, like we lost a regular season game in 2020, and the guy just told me like, "Oh, your parents live in this district, right, in Wolfsburg?" Like, whoa, 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 whoa. We jumped ahead from like threatening me as a person to now like my family. Like this is
What do
stuff
you
that
what do you do
doesn't
in a
get talked
scenario like
about.
that? I guess you just don't reply to it, but
I mean, this
you
is
presumably got to
no,
let your
this
parents know or something like this.
no, this is the one only account I actually went to the police with and said like, okay, this is what happened. I don't care if they threaten me, but family goes too far. But it's just like the things that don't get talked about because it's part of it. We also get again. I mean, you never can get paid enough money to deal with that shit, right? That doesn't belong in society. But I just have a different view on it now because ultimately I understand that in this moment, even right now on the stream, I don't come as the person Fabian Lohmann. I come as my function as the head coach of Fnatic, as GrabbZ to the stream. And with that comes a certain responsibility and a certain view people have of me. And I understand it, and therefore I can live with it. And I think I can just also for myself manage it better.
How did that situation end up resolving itself, if you don't mind me asking? You going to the police? Did it end up going anywhere, or
I mean, the account just disappeared 2 weeks afterwards, and there's nothing else from it. I mean, ultimately, I think it's also a thing of I can give a story like without telling the player that it happened to, but it's really funny and just it shows like how fans don't view us as human beings, which again I understand, right? We are performers, we are athletes, we are not the human being. Is that a player of mine got an Instagram message of like it wasn't even that bad to begin with, like go retire, you're washed up, I hate you, what are you doing here? You don't deserve to be there, blah blah. All the like a big ass message, right? And the player in question just like was so bored that he just wrote, "Yeah, man, sorry. Ever since my dog died 3 weeks ago, I just can't focus as much." The player didn't have a dog, right? It's a completely fabricated story. You can still see the message of the guy, but he instantly, "Oh man, I'm so sorry for you. You got this. I believe in you. I support you. The fans love you, and you will bounce back." Because in that moment of humanity, they see you again as the person, right, and not as the player.
yeah,
And
no,
I think,
it's so funny because I literally spoke about this last night on the show I was on with Kire and Rich and Nymeria. It's like any time I've ever received any harassment like that, you just be like, I just get people like the joke is, you get people saying like, "Oh, kill yourself" or whatever, and you just go, I might actually do. Like, I'm like a vulnerable person. Like I've struggled with like depression my entire life. It's like, what if there comes a day where that does happen? Like you laugh
Yeah.
about it, right? It's like, what are you gonna do when you see that news? You're gonna be like, oh my god, like I bet did
Yeah.
I contribute to this? Like it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
fucker, you are gonna feel like that, and I hope you fucking suffer because of it. And then
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
like, obviously, the minute you say that to them, and anytime, and I have jokingly said that to people, they've been like, oh my god, you're so right. What the fuck am I doing? So it's like wake
Yeah.
up moment for them. Yeah, it's so true. Like, what you're talking about.
Yeah. And the more I understand this dynamic, the easier it is for me to interact with like the haters or people who are like very angry at social media, just because I understand where it comes from. And again, in the same way that I can feel attacked, this guy might have a shit life. His house doesn't go well. Um, has circumstances that don't go well. Just goes home and wants to see Fnatic win, and we play like shit. But I can also see that angle of being like, of course we disappoint him, and maybe this was the one thing he looked for the entire week, and we fucked up. And he still cares enough. Like again, the whole time thing, right? He cares enough. Got on his phone and tweeted us. It's only 5 seconds, but it is investing time, and I should be grateful for that because this allows me like do what I do on a daily basis.
Interesting. One of the directions I wanted to go and one of the players I wanted to talk about is I'm very interested in Upset as a player
Mhm.
throughout time and history in LEC. He's always been this kind. I mean, the meme. It's a horrible narrative that gets spread around him. I've laughed at it obviously like once or twice because everyone laughs at the macabre. But the whole thing about like potential man or like thing that people refer to him as. I feel like for him, for as long as he's been around, it's been this thing of like he's one of the best. He's top two, he's top one, he's top three, but he's never seems to end up winning, and there always seems to be a thing that clouds his performance. I wondered if you could give perspective and allow a bit of more of an empathetic insight, similar to what we're talking about as kind of a tangent. He's someone that I feel like people are so horrible to, but clearly has so much talent. I wanted to give you the platform briefly to potentially humanize and add more context to upset the player and speak about working with him.
I just think if you, as a person, you want Europe to win, people like Upset are the ones you should support more. I think he is one of the examples of correct hard work and trying to improve himself every day. I can't speak about him years ago. He also acknowledges he has changed, right? Upset now is not the same Upset he was 2020, for example. Um, he is someone who invested a lot of time into his personal growth. I'm very mindful about him as a person now, what he can do better. Has his shortcomings like we all do, but someone who generally tries. And I'm not gonna speak for him, but I can tell that he notices it, right? I can tell that he knows that people have it out for him. I think especially the whole like him and Super dynamic didn't help out. Um, I think the Spanish speaking community still has enjoys a lot when he fails, and he is a very sensitive person still. He's not me, let's say, who is a bit more of an emotional rock, right? So ultimately, I can't tell you who to support. You like who you like, but we can't speak about um, lack of work ethic, lack of talent, lack of improvement in the region, and then demonize these people who are actually trying to make it better. I think that's the best way to describe it. Because he, again, for he has his faults, but he came in every day and tried to be better. one Hundred percent.
Are you comfortable in any way kind of giving a fair trial to some of those shortcomings, or would you not? Would you feel like you were speaking for him?
I think I would speak for him too much. I think he's not comfortable as much as well being this outspoken publicly, so I don't want to do it for him.
Okay, that's fair.
Um, I think at a certain time when he wants to, I can do something fanatic with him. I think he deserves the platform. I think it would help, but that's something he needs
Equally,
to
I'd love to
do
speak to him at
himself.
some point. I think I've spoken to him in the past about doing an interview. He'd be a good person to get
Yeah.
on and talk to about that. In regards to kind of yeah, okay, I think we've kind of said enough on that part. A player that you obviously was moved on from Fnatic this year, and it was the player that you got Poby in for. Poby was the main kind of change you made this year, and it's also
Yeah.
what kind of led to a galvanized Fnatic. Obviously, not what you would call a galvanized Fnatic, but it meant that you got to Worlds, and it was definitely an improvement. Obviously, you moved on Humanoid, who was a very franchised player, storied player at Fnatic. Could you potentially talk to me about the relationship there and I feel like with anything like that, the thing that fans don't necessarily understand a lot of the time is that potentially he wasn't good for that environment. I'm not saying that's what you're saying, but that's potentially he wasn't good for that environment. Doesn't take away from the fact that he's a good or bad player. It's just like maybe not a good fit for that time or place. I was wondering if I
Yeah,
get your comment on potentially that transition, reasons behind that change, and just a reflection on that, because obviously it did lead to some good things, but it did come at the
yeah.
expense of a player that had been at Fnatic for quite a while.
Yeah, I think ultimately the relationship between him, or like the entire top side, basically has run its course at that point. I think in hindsight, and if I don't know, maybe if there was a sports psychologist, he already could have said that they just can't work together longer. Not they don't dislike each other. Like Razork and Marek, for example, they're still friends. They like each other's company, but they're just so opposed in the game that over that many years, the relationship is very strained or was very strained. I think adding Upside and Mickey gave both like a way of like not coping but being okay. We have two good players, different environment. We can make this work. And like any relationship, you have hope for change, and then the same mistake happens again and again. At some point, you just kind of stop believing. And I think that's what happened in the team. They stopped believing in each other. And as I said, after spring, a joke had to be made. It just so happened to be Marek. Marek Humanoid is the person I actually got along with kind of the best in the team at that point. I felt like. Um, but as I said, a change had to be done. He also wasn't very resistant to being changed. Let's just say that. He was like basically, if you say as a coach a change has to be made and one player is kind of fine with it, then you kind of know who has to be the first to go, right? Because that mentality is something that can have ripple effects. I think, or hope for him that the break gave him a bit more clearance, a bit more distance can be good. And I also think he's a good player, and I wish him the best. But yeah, it could have been also Oscar, could have been Razok. It just so happened that market wise, and again the way he also reacted to the news, made him the first choice kind of to change. Um, because no matter for worse, for better for worse, right? If a player says no, I want to fight for my spot, cool, I can respect that. If a player says yeah, I can see it, and if it's me, then it's me. That's not necessarily the mentality you want to have as a building block, right?
Interesting, and it's interesting to hear you say there that Marek was probably Humanoid was one of the best, was the best player you got on well with. Is that on a more just in terms of personal as people, or does that run alongside the values you look for in a player with work ethic? Because I think actually a narrative that I think quite often gets spread about Humanoid is that he's kind of not as he's kind of in it for the money sometimes. I mean, there's like discourse about the contract size and stuff like this, and it's a thing of like, oh, he's not like super motivated and stuff like this. I wondered if you could comment on that because that might potentially
Mm.
unravel or potentially run counter to a narrative that is spread around him.
For sure, he is not in for the money. I think for sure he has a love for the game and a deep appreciation, and he wants to do good. I think and it happens very often with players who won early, has a bit of an idolized view of how easy it should be or how it should feel like. And if reality contrasts with that, he tends to then reject reality in a way and be like, well, nothing I can do then. What I mentioned earlier, this whole responsibility thing of either he can say, okay, this is not the environment that I had when I was winning. How can I help my team to get to that point? Or you can be like, oh, it's not the environment that I'm used to. I have trouble seeing how this can work, and I lower my efforts subconsciously, even, right? But for sure, he's someone who deeply cares about playing good, which I really appreciate. It's not even the I want to win, but he's someone who wants to win in his correct way of playing the game, in a thought out methodical way, um, which I vibe with pretty well. Yeah, I just think that the years without success and also in the same wave, the failures repeated wore him down, kind of. Um,
And
I
I, I
still
think
believe him as a player.
I think one of the things that I attempt to do with these interviews, and you can agree or disagree with me, and it's a thing we got into with Inspired yesterday, is often when there's a certain level of things when it's left unsaid that it leads to speculation. So I think
Yeah.
with Inspired yesterday, a good point I reached with him was talking about the nature of his approach to competition and why that was potentially justification for some of the criticism of him being slightly more toxic. And he was able to get into it in a way of like, well, I'm here to win X, Y, Z. And then it became a thing of like, oh, you're not just toxic for the sake of it. You truly believe this is a thing to win.
Yeah.
Similarly, I wondered when you talk about the relationship between Humanoid and Razork, or Razork, I'm sorry, and it being a case of you potentially wearing her down over years. I wondered if you could comment or give more context to the layman or someone who doesn't understand much about his league, or even people like just in pure, simple League of Legends terms. Where was the dissonance there in terms of approach to the game philosophy? Is it the case that Razor wants to farm more, Humanoid wants him to play for his lane? Like, where's the disconnect occurring? Because obviously it comes from a key disagreement from the game, and I think in speaking about that, it avoids like speculation.
Um, to paint it easy, how easily is it to repeat the steps to win the game? Is there a formula you can adhere to play the game and get to a winning spot? And how quickly should you be abandoning it to be opportunistic and see a play and act on it?
So, not to put
Um,
words in your mouth, but one of them is more improvisational on the spot, and one of them is more stick to the method, follow the steps.
yes.
Would you mind saying which is which?
Razork is the more aggressive one, the more that goes for the aggressive plays, that goes for the outplays, and Matic is the one who wants to set up the side waves, make sure that we are in a good map state, and then play from there.
So, yeah, it's a
Um,
foundational mismatch in terms of difference. And would you say it's fair as a coach, there's not necessarily something wrong about being improvisational, it's just a different style of play?
I think in league everything is a balance, right?
Okay.
There can also be too much planning. You can lose games because you are adhering to the plan too much, right? To a certain degree, you need to understand the book to break the book. It just comes at the cost of
I
like
guess what I'm saying is
how,
it's not
yeah,
necessarily the case that one of them was doing something wrong, it was just a mismatch.
yeah, pretty much. It's like, and again, it's not if they were playing for the first time that year, it wouldn't have mattered that much. But they have played for so long together, they have lost in good spots so often that every time it doesn't work out, it hurts even more, right? It's basically the whole thing of like a droplet on a stone at a certain point can carve through a mountain, right? That drop of water that either Humanoid not TPing fast enough for a play of Razork or Razork going for a play when Humanoid was about to set up a wave. It goes both ways, right? That is a drop on the mountain, and we were at the point where, um, yeah, the water met its path, and there just was no fundamental trust. Obviously, there's also a world where Game 5 against KC in winter, we win. We go against G2, we win, and then that win, that trust, and if we actually can make it, changes the whole dynamic. There is a world where that happened, right? Very often it's just about this little switch and that belief in winning that comes back. But I just felt like both parties at some point had, not even consciously, but just in the back of the head, the feeling of like, this can't work out. We're gonna fall short if we play together. And so we try to break it up.
Interesting. And I wanted to kind of, because the only person we've not really talked about in this whole remuneration or combination, how does Oscar fit into this? Because you talked about it being topside related issues. Obviously, he's a big part of that. But it sounds like with mid and jungle being the kind of main, not butting heads necessarily, but pulling the rope in different directions potentially. How does he factor into the way that you potentially wanted to play the game? Because he's a player for me that's been interesting, would be fair to say inconsistent at times, but he's also a major part of the reason why you guys made it to Worlds. He majorly stepped up in the KC series. There's obviously a very
Mhm.
good player in there and has showed up at
Yeah.
times, but has been criticized for inconsistencies. I was wondering if you could comment on him.
Just to like stick in the whole direction aspect, right? Like if we have
Yeah,
one player in the direction of playing stable,
yeah, yeah.
one player in the direction of playing more risky. Oscar was someone who just didn't add any direction at certain times. Um, who did not have the strong opinion that I believe you need to be the best or be in the team of the best, right? Which is something we had to work with him a lot. I think our sports psychologist helped him massively in summer. I think that was a really good change for him where he was able to work on his routines even outside the game, work on his routines of how he learns from the game and have a different viewpoint that is not even, and that's always the value of a sports psychologist is that if I talk to him, I'm always still his head coach, right? I take into consideration what he says about the game and I try to argue my point. Whereas with Richard, our sports psychologist, he's just in a third party. He can just give his feelings, his concerns into the void, basically. Doesn't get judgment for it, and then they can work together on a plan to get better. And I think that improved, but that was basically Oscar in that moment. Like we had someone pulling left, someone pulling right, and then someone not pulling at all, which can work in certain teams. I personally don't. I have trouble with that approach. Like going back to the facilitating thing, right? I am good at hearing different opinions and making sure that we get out of it with a unified approach. But if someone doesn't give me an opinion or doesn't have an opinion, I have trouble because I think as an athlete or whatever you want to call us, you should take pride in your day-to-day job, and it also comes with an opinion. To go back to football, right? Every professional at some point was the best player in his team. That's why they are where they are, and that comes with a level of ego and a level of responsibility and wanting to impact the team in a positive way. And I think sometimes, especially these young people in esports, they are afraid of overstepping their boundaries because they haven't learned that just because you have an opinion, it doesn't mean that you automatically are putting someone down or disagreeing with someone. And I think that's just something that has to be learned. And I think Oscar made a good job in summer in that regard.
Is there not a difficulty because I'm kind of getting the fuller picture as you speak about everyone? Upset to me from how he's been spoken about, and potentially you can run counter to this from working with him. Upset seems to be a player that's very much like game needs to be played through bot lane, and like the game comes through him almost. Does that not create difficulty if you've got these kind of lacks of like opposite directions or lack of direction in the top side potentially? Upset must at some capacity feel in the game. Well, hang on, guys. We have a direction. The direction is me.
Yeah, it was a result. Like our playstyle was a result of these characters, right? Because the misconception of upset is that people say upset says you have to combat. What happens is upset says if you combat, this is the result.
Yeah.
Like if you combat now, we can dive them. If you combat now, I'm sure we can kill them. If you combat now, this is the lead we will get. This is what he's saying. He takes space, of course. He's someone that doesn't like if there's silence. Like he wants to have a plan. He wants to have action. So if no one says anything, he will fill the space. But if the space is taken before him, he can adapt to it. We just had issues that personality-wise, we didn't have many of those voices that could make a plan before him that he can play towards. So therefore, he just said combat now because we can kill them. I can get a lead, and then naturally, like of course, if you're Razork, if let's say not wanting to like you talk to Oscar, right? Example Oscar, who says like, yeah, I guess you can gank him here. I guess he's gankable. Or Upset says in 2 waves, combat, we dive them. They have no sums. They can't live. I got tower. Blah blah. Where do you go? It's a natural response to go where the plan actually has more steps involved, has a bit like you know the input you have to give, you know the output, right? That's just the nature of how communication works. So I think that was just the result of how we talk in game. It was known to us. This is something we try to approach every day. Obviously, changing the way you think or how assertive you are as a person is really hard, right? Again, the same thing I talked to Mickey before. You can't put a gun to Mickey's head and say be a leader. I can't put a gun to Oscar's head and say make plans now instantly, right? It's a process. It takes time. Time that in esports we don't always have. So at some point, the decision in summer was: do we keep approaching it this way and try to make it work with Oscar? Or do we put a band-aid on it? And normally, as a coach, I really hate band-aiding because it limits your potential so much. Like if you band-aid, you just admit that you can't work on this anymore, right? So after we lost to Koi in the first round, Upset, for example, made the other direction of like, you know what? We try it this way, it does not work. I will just shut up for 2 weeks now and see what happens. I will actively try to give room to my teammates, which Oscar then filled well, and I think the result was the KC series. And that's normally though what happens also in terms of psychology. You need to like be at rock bottom to build yourself up again. Like it is really hard to change your behavior if you're feeling fine, if everything is going well. You need to actually be at your worst to then look at yourself in the mirror and be, I need to change this, right? So the loss to MCOI in summer was kind of that moment for the team in a way of like, okay, we lost. If we continue like this, we lose again. So what do we do? And then from there on, suddenly it was easier for the entire team to like play more for top, even though the whole problem was known beforehand, right? Nothing changed, but just that loss, I guess, gave a bit of more of a kick. to actually follow through with it in a way. Um, but obviously, this doesn't mean that Oscar is consistent in it, right? Against Cassie, it worked out. Against MCO, it was worse again a bit, which is not his fault, not to say that. Um, but yeah, that's basically how the team functioned internally.
That's interesting. It's a really good insight into how things were. Sorry. I wanted to ask you then, what was the main kind of focus for you? Like, if there's a word for the year in terms of improvement, was it that getting on the same page then, or was it maybe something a bit different to that in terms of just over the course of the year? What was the one thing you felt like this is what we need to fix to be truly good? What was the unlocker to the potential?
There's so much stuff. Just on my way of thinking, I'm a bit more in the school of like the whole like Razork community dynamic, right? Of I think the game tells you a lot of what you're supposed to do if you look at the minimap and how waves are looking right now. And as a staff, we try to make them understand and give them tools of okay, and if the waves and if the pressure looks like this, these are the tools you can use. And then the idea, of course, is repeating that in scrims to a certain degree that you build trust in it on stage.
Can I ask
Where
a quick
yeah,
interjection there?
but
If you're more of the school that the map dictates these things, it sounds like you're more aligned with Humanoid, which is in tandem with what you were saying about you got on best with him. Is it then obviously you said it's a consequence of the market, the fact that Humanoid was the one to go and the fact that he was more willing. Does that not present a future problem going forward because you've retained an element of the ideology that potentially is not congruent to what you want to do as a coach?
I mean, the same way I expect players to adapt to my view, I have to adapt to their view, right? We already said before
It
that
still presents a difficulty though, doesn't it? Because Razork is
it does.
yeah.
It does, but I think that's something that every team has. Um, and as I said before, right, there's nothing inherently wrong with being a bit more aggressive. Um, the main importance of it is just to agree to a point that the entire team can pull in the same direction, right? And that's also why I say as a head coach, like it's my responsibility. I guess we didn't get to the point, or like not fast enough, or well enough in this year. Which also means though that if again I have to speak vaguely about the roster, right? Because nothing is decided. That's why we always talk about if about every player. So if I continue to work with Upset, if I continue to work with Razork, it will be on the premise of buying in, okay, or talking beforehand, what is the direction we together want to go? What concessions can I give you? What concessions can you give me to make this work? Which is a different basis than last year, where suddenly it was like, oh, I'm here, you guys are here, let's make it work. Um, because that way we can create a buy-in a priori
I heard
that
you're
we
creating a
can.
few buyouts.
Hmm?
I heard you're creating a few buyouts.
Yeah, that's the wrong word. Off-season talks get to me. Um, but it is easier to hold yourself to hold yourself to something accountable if you agree to it beforehand, right? So I'm very confident that if I work with player X again, Oscar, Razork, Poby, Upset, that we will do this on the basis of having these talks, and that we're then able, also from my side, to hold ourselves accountable to what we agreed upon, and to have a better idea of what direction we want to go.
Hmm.
Um, Basically that, yeah.
How did scrims go this Worlds? 'Cause I feel like I've not really heard too much about it, but it's to be assumed that it was a bit of a bollocking.
It was okay actually. We didn't play any Korean teams. We didn't play TES. We lost 2-1 against AL. We won 2-1 against BLG. Was mixed against
How come?
CFO.
Because from what I remember, the way they always put it across is it's kind of like it's kind of like a dojo structure with the LCK teams, isn't it? They kind of send you against their worst team, and then you have to work your way up the rankings. Is that still how that
Yeah.
works?
I mean, we had the scrim against KT scheduled, but they had to cancel because of riot content. So I think this would have been the approach of if we do well against them, it opens more doors, but also with the third seed Europe. Like, if they give anyone a chance, it's G2 and MK, right? And then worst case, they take us. That's just the reality of how it goes in the worlds, especially also
But
that FlyQuest set up a good.
was that always the case? I feel like it wasn't. I feel like from I'm obviously never been involved in a team, but at least anecdotally from what I've heard, it's never been the thing that the third place European team just can't book any Korean teams at all.
Mm, I think it was hard in the past as well.
Okay.
But that also depends again on schedule. And for example, G2 was in China earlier. I don't think they played Korean teams back then because they stayed in Korea. But let's imagine a world where G2 does well. They would have been more open to also book MKO and us, right? So it just creates this like the stair structure where, as you said, or the dojo, as you said, right? Um, but yeah, again, we had a KT scrim planned. Didn't work out because of scheduling. Probably if we do well there, it would have opened more doors. But going back to scrims, like I think it was fine, like 50-50 most of the time. So yeah, scrim wise, I think that was the issue. Surprisingly, we,
Oh,
we
sorry, go on.
struggled against actually VKS. Funnily enough, we apparently against other teams, Ton of Thieves was good, but we shitstormed Ton of Thieves. Like to a degree, we were like, okay, are we actually wasting our time here? But apparently they did good against G2, for example. I don't know, maybe they took us lightly. But yeah, I don't think it was a horrible scrim experience. I think we learned some good stuff that we tried to take into the games. Obviously, didn't work out.
Any funny scrim stories? I spoke to Inspired yesterday. He told me a story about in 2024 they 5-0 TES the day before they played quarterfinals, and they played Nunu like most games and just level 2 ganked Jackie Love, and they got so tilted that they got 0-3 the next day. Any funny stories? I suppose not much to laugh about at this Worlds, but anything you could share with us?
From this game,
Any horror stories in scrims? I mean, equally.
any horror stories? I don't think so. I think it was very neutral actually. If I think back now,
Okay.
there was no outlining experience. And like, holy moly, what is going on?
I'd be quite
Let me think.
interested to hear, over the course of scrim sets, like how Poby was doing against some of the mids. I mean, I don't know who you said you played. He played against. Said you playing against BLG and AL. How is he
Yeah,
stacking up in scrims against Shanks and Knight?
it was fine. I think Shanks played better in scrims than the Knight against us. Against Knight, probably got leads. Laning phase. Against Shanks, it was a bit more difficult.
And
But
upset strikes me as a bit of a scrim demon as well. How was he doing against Elk and On?
again, like against BG, we won. But they played, I think, very Chinese scrim style of like, let's just go in and see what happens.
Interesting.
We just so happened to come on top.
Is that a problem in Europe? Do you think people still, because obviously the meme is always like G2 are scrim champions of the world, which I think is a facetious interpretation of what Remain is trying to do by publishing their scrims. I think it's about
Yeah.
transparency. But in any case, is like, do you think there is a problem in Europe still? Do people buy into scrims too much? Do you think because like the argument that people make is that G2 was doing so well in scrims. I think they were like slapping around teams up until they went
Yeah.
against TS and they lost. Do people buy into scrim results too much in the West?
First of all, I want to say that like scrims got way better compared to like when I was in BDS back then. Like it's so much better to scrim now in Europe. Many more teams that actually put an effort
Do you think
to
G2 and
make it
Remain
so.
is a contributor to that?
I think what Roma's doing is good. Yeah,
Okay.
I think some accountability would be good. Um, just to make sure that teams. I mean, for example, the whole cancellation thing basically stopped. I think because of G2, because people were too afraid of then being blocked online for canceling streams. So that is almost a done issue. Um, so yeah, he should continue this. It's good what he does. I think we still have the issue that, and I don't mean G2 by this. I know G2 stuff is really good. Same for KC and MCOY, but I still think overall on average in the league, teams have issues realizing when they won badly and when they had a good game but lost. So people are still very much married to like the day is only good if you go for 1-5-0. Whereas obviously I still strongly
Well, I
believe you
suppose
can 0-5.
that's why I was asking because you sort of the way you talked about it with and what I hear about LCK teams, especially Chinese teams, is this thing of like, well, they came in and they just kind of saw what happened, so it's like, well, great, like maybe we beat them 3-2 or 2-1, but like they were tested, like we were giving it our all, like try hard, and they were like sussing us out, you know? It's kind of like that thing of like when you play against the chess computer and you play like, the famous anecdote of like Hikaru playing against Magnus Carlsen. He says the biggest mistake he made is he played like 30 games in one night against Magnus Carlsen. And before he
Mm.
played those, he felt like it was like competitive between the two of them. And he played 30 games against Magnus and he did all right. Like apparently he like split the games or maybe he was even ahead slightly. But after that night, he was never able to compete against Magnus again because Magnus just completely downloaded him off of that night. It feels like that's kind of the thing that's like European teams every year at Worlds. They're like, oh my god, like 4-1 against Gen G. We can really do this, guys. But it's like, well, they just spent the entire time downloading you because they have a completely different attitude towards scrims.
Yeah, exactly. I think also one thing is that if you think back last year, the whole BDS Academy thing where they got lauded because they played against G2 in scrims and they're one of the better scrim partners, right?
Mm.
Is that if there is this perceived gap between skill, one team will play for their life and one team will just be like another Tuesday. Which of course on stage is could be different, right?
It's like that
Where
War Trophy thing, right? Like it's just
yeah,
another.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like if you're Fnatic or Flycos or whatever and you take a game of T1, like you go into there like holy shit, we feel great, right? Because we beat them. And they probably have to like go on loyalties and be like, who's this guy even? Does he play what champions does he play? Oh, he is a pro for 10 years. I didn't even know. Like that's probably how it goes for them, right? If we're being honest here. So I think that also creates this whole like these good scrim days against Asian teams. And then on stage they lock in and they look at you, they have nameplates off. They don't care who you are, they just play their game.
Mhm. Do you feel like you have this is a question I like to ask people is do you feel like you have international recognition? Like you know when you go and do like the jersey swaps or potentially you run into other teams, maybe they're in the same hotel. Do other teams from like Korea and China like recognize you to the players and coaches? They know who you are?
I mean, it got less because I was out of international for 4 years. It was for sure a thing in 2020, where we like looked at the equals and at the G2 times.
What are some like
Like just
have you
how
ever had
this.
like an interaction with like some of the coaching giants of League like okay Koma, like people like this?
Yeah, I mean, it just actually it's just more like how much can I share on stream, right? It was like a very
Oh, if
personal
you've got a
exchange
good
and nice.
Koma story, I'd love a good Koma story,
No,
please.
no, it's nah, it's too personal. Also, a very nice story for me, so I keep it close to the chest. Maybe off
Okay,
stream.
okay. The
I
chat
mean,
the
it's
chat
still
wants the
it's
Koma story, man.
like I can tell you one thing. For example, it was
Okay.
2019 at MSI. I meet Faker in the hallway. I bow down. Hello, Faker. He says hello. He had no clue who the fuck I was. We beat them in MSI. Then at Worlds, the same thing happens on the hallway. I bow down. He was on hello GrabbZ and keeps walking. I'm like, he knows who the fuck I am. And I was like, yes, I made it.
That's so cool. I
And
remember it with him. It's like the
even
whole thing of
MSI.
like, oh, sorry, go on. What were you gonna say?
No, I was to say just even MSI. Like I remember distinctively, like Purvis and Yankos coming back into the room, giggling like little kids, like, "Oh my god, we beat Faker!" And he knew who we were. Like, "Oh my god!" And, like little kids on Christmas morning. Um, I assume it's still the same. Like, probably even more. Like, he just
It's a
farms
question.
aura every
We're gonna
year.
go on another tangent now, but like one of the questions I want to ask is like that relationship between Perks and Caps, where it's just like it's so interesting that they played on a team together because it's like almost that changing of the guards. Like Perks was like the Titan of Europe, and Perks even like was when Caps came up, Perks was still like not even necessarily like tenured in his prime. It was like I think
Mm-hmm.
Perks was still quite young. People look at it like if you look back at it retrospectively, you don't like remember it completely. People often like might think like, oh, Caps came in when like Perks was getting a little bit on, and like Caps was immediately. But no, like Perks is still like Perks. I wanted to talk about that relationship there because they played on a team together, but it's like what is their relationship like? Because a lot of people would look at it like, oh, Perks is the more serious one and Caps is like more whimsical. It's almost like an older brother and younger brother in that kind of perspective. As a
Yeah.
teacher, as a mentor in some ways, as a sensei in others, talk to me about a reflection on that relationship between those two because it must have been so interesting to watch at times.
I can see the bigger brother analogy, but I think in general this entire G2 roster, the reason why it was such a lightning in a bottle was the simple fact that you had 5 players who actually wanted to win. And what I mean by that is that if you ask anybody, do you want to be successful and win? You will say yes. But if you then ask, what are you really giving for this? Like, what are you willing to give to win? Um, they are the players who would have been willing to give the most. And also, very importantly, is that very often, us as humans, we still want to hold on to our ways. And I want to win, but my way. I want to be successful, but my way. This is how I imagine it working, right? And we had 5 players who really wanted to win, and who are also willing to adapt to others and to change their ways. And they weren't beholden to their own idea of reaching that goal. So discussions we had were really fruitful, and people took it to heart and had a lot of respect for each other. So I don't even think that the relationship between Perks and Caps was very different. Um, I don't think that Perks had like this idea of little brother to Caps. I think they had the similar and same respect they had to each other than
Potentially that's
anyone else on the
patronizing. I
team.
apologize if so.
No. Like I could see why. Like in the pictures they made with the MSI medal and stuff, right? With Perks like over his shoulder and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah.
I can see why, and it kind of makes sense. One thing though that people have wrong with Caps is that I talk a lot about responsibility and having an opinion and being demanding and stuff, right? Caps is very whimsical. Caps is very he loves the game. He's very innocent in the way he approaches this. Like it's just nice to see. But Caps has an opinion.
Oh yeah.
Caps will tell you when he thinks he fucked up. Caps can be very fucking intense when it comes to winning, right? And I think this is something that people get wrong with him because I mean, it's Rasmus. We all love Rasmus. He's the greatest kid ever, right? He's the greatest. Like he just has fun. But if it comes about winning, he will make sure that you follow his way if he thinks it's
Could
good.
you share anecdotes about that? Because it's a long time ago now, and it's interesting for me. I always do have this opinion of whimsy with him, but then I remember, the kid that he was. He's a talk shit kid in solo queue, right? So he always has that element of being very outspoken. He's obviously had that trait. If you speak to his dad about it, his dad reacts in shock horror at the idea that his son was ever toxic in solo queue, and it clearly was a thing of when he went professional. His dad was like, "Listen, boy, we're going to
Yeah.
imbue some serious professional standards within you." But obviously, he's still foundationally the same person. I wonder if you could share anecdotes of caps that is most intense when it comes to winning, because it would provide a different profile to someone that we think of as being not necessarily non-serious, but a bit more whimsical, as you say. I want to get a more of a profile on caps, the intense
Mm,
athlete that you're talking about.
it's just more a thing of you have this baseline, very happy, very smiley, optimistic person, right? Who you see on stream, like always being like, yeah, life is great. But when this smile fades and he just says, no, you're wrong. I did this because I have to do this. If you don't see it, I don't know what to tell you. Like also in this tone of voice out of nowhere.
So when did that happen? Like when
Yeah. Every second day in scrims. Like if he made a mistake, he made sure that we know he made a mistake. And of course, he like in the beginning, he will try to point it out like in this nice way. But if then it becomes a discussion at some point, he can be stubborn. Like Caps is also someone, like at least back then, it's a long time ago, right? Is where if I still disagreed with him, I knew just drop it and talk to him tomorrow. Like
Oh, so
there's
it's
no
quite
point.
stubborn in some ways then.
Yeah, yeah, he is, or he was. Again, I have no idea how he is now. Um, but and then also his stubbornness shines through, like and supersedes his like smiley personality, right? And he sits down, has a very intense look, very focused look, and like, okay, let's go next. I want to play the champion. Let's do it. And he will say, or like he will stuff, or like he will say, like, okay, if this happens again, do what the fuck I say, and it will work. And if it doesn't, then we change my way. Like, okay, cool, let's do it. Right? And this is what I mean also of taking responsibility. Like, this is what you want. Just being like, oh yeah, sure, I can do what you say. That's not being a good teammate. That's taking the easy way out, in my opinion. And I think that's also why this like ultimately also. I mean, you talked to Inspired yesterday and the so toxic thing and wanting to win, right? I think it's fair to say that the J2 roster, we're all good friends, but we didn't become friends first and then won. We became friends
Because you won.
because we put in the work together and then we won. But mostly the respect we had towards the work for each other, right? Then you become a friend. That's the result of it.
But it would be fair to
It's not
say
this.
that everyone on that team, that G2 team, is toxic. You say it contextually because it's a thing that the conversation with Inspired is like, what is really toxic and what is really like, a manifest, like a bad receival of feedback and a bad recipient of general thing. But it'd be fair to say that like everyone on that GT roster as players is like toxic in their own individual way, somewhat to the traditional definition.
Yeah, I was supposed to say like toxic is a very wide definition of what that means, right?
Sure, but
I heard that in the other teams that people said Perks is toxic, that Jankos is toxic. I heard that, and I was like,
I
I
wanted to ask
can't
you,
agree with it.
it's an interesting thing to talk about. How does that manifest? Because for me, you're talking about caps as this kind of intensity and stubbornness. I'd imagine for Wunder, it's slightly with Wunder just speaking to him and the way he comes across, it's more sarcastic and potentially
Mm,
passive aggressive under the guise of humor and stuff like this. Would that be an accurate way of putting it for Wunder?
Oh, he can also like sarcastic is his normal way, yeah. But he can like that's the thing. Every player on the team could be intense and could be no, this is how it is. If you don't see it, you're fucking stupid. And that's the thing, right? It is inherently toxic to say that, right? Like you're stupid. But if you have this
But
base
it's a
understanding
lot
of
quicker though.
yes, but also if you have this base understanding in this team that everybody just wants to win, and you know in that
Nothing's personal.
context he just wants to win, why would I care?
Hmm.
Call me whatever the fuck you want. I get your point, you know? Like sure, can it be better? I don't yeah, but why would I care? I'd rather have you tell me you're fucking stupid, this is how it is, than you being, yeah, but I truly believe this is the best way to put no, just tell me you're fucking stupid. Let me do it this way. And if it doesn't work, then I listen to you. Like
Interesting.
sure, that let's then if I still disagree, we can sit down tomorrow. And if not, I'll okay, sure, let's do it your way and see what happens. Because it also like if you have trust in someone and he says so strongly, like, I believe this, if you don't see it, you're stupid, it's easier also for you to concede the point because you have inherent trust in him and his ability and his willingness to win, right?
Interesting. I suppose at this point it's a cow that's been milked more than well
Yeah.
the breast of a cow that's got more than 30 calves kind of suckling upon it every night. But I wondered if there's any stories or funny anecdotes or just incredible stories from the era of G2 that you haven't shared at this point that you've been keeping to your chest.
I think everything could be shared has been shared.
That's fair.
I just know, actually, I remember, I don't know if that has been shared. It's kind of funny as well. We had the boot camp for Worlds in London, actually, in the Red Bull facility, 2019. And we were like in this basement type of situation. And
In Shoreditch.
yeah, we were there, yeah.
Yeah, I go there all the time. That's
Mm.
so funny that you boot camp there.
And we were like, it was like 40 degrees down there, very humid, very bad. And our manager back then had to set up the PC in a different way for a photo shoot. And we're all sweating and like typical like boyish behavior, like loud, whatever, right? Chatting shit. Process playing solo queue. And while setting up the other PCs, the manager managed to actually turn off Perk's PC while he's playing solo queue. And I swear to God, I think every person in the room got that primal sense of fear and just stopped breathing for like 5 seconds. And and we just all like we didn't dare to look like the sun, you know. You know you can't look, but you kind of want to. Like we all just check and then just promise like it is fine. Caps, can I go to your PC? And like yes,
Wow.
and it just moved PC. And I think I still like waited 30 seconds before I dared to like breathe or move. And they were like, okay, it's fine. We got off here alive. But that was hilarious in the moment.
He's a very complicated person, Luca, from speaking to him. I remember I did an interview with him I never released when I went to the when he was on Vitality. I went there and I spoke to him for a few hours. Should probably rehash that
I think
conversation. And
so.
obviously I worked with him as well on Ruddy Sat briefly. I don't think he's massively fond of his time there. Didn't include it in his retirement tweet, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But he's very complicated in that he can be a massive dick sometimes. I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying that. Like, of
Oh yeah.
course. But then also as well, there is a similar to the reason I'm bringing this up is similar to the story you're talking about. There is almost a surprising sensitivity there sometimes in the way that he comes across. You're expecting him to be boiled over with rage, but he's actually surprisingly quite calm. And he goes, "Can I use
Yeah.
Cap's PC?" And that's something that I've experienced with him speaking to him is that there's a lot more depth to him than you might assume. Sometimes he is like he is that kid that was crying when he lost at MSI a lot of the
Oh
time.
yeah. Like I mean, of course, for me it's easy to say. I don't think it's complicated. I've been 4 years with him, right? Or 3 years actually. But I think he's the epitome of like the entire. I don't care how you say it to me, as long as you want to win. I just think that's what it is. I just think he doesn't think in a moment of how he comes across. He just wants his message across, and you need to be able to read that and to be okay with that. I think. But if you are, then he can also give a lot of, like as you said, right? Like he's a sensitive person. He's actually good with people if they give him the room for it. So I really enjoyed my time with him.
Cool. I think we're pretty much going to wrap around here. I've had you for a long time. I'm sure there's more things we could talk about, but I'm conscious of your time, and I'm sure we'll have conversations in the future. I wanted to ask you just because we talked about you being a lover of raves and whatnot. You could pick any player. If you can only pick one, maybe give you three if it's more difficult to pick one. Any player you get to go on a night out with, who is it as of today?
Expecke.
Wow. Oh God, I don't
Yeah.
think we can end now. I've got to talk to you about this. From everything I've heard about that guy, I did an interview with Mithy once. He just goes like, this guy was like the Casanova Supreme. Like he just was like just the man to be around in terms of a party. What makes you say that?
Well, not just because he was one of the few players that didn't go to weekend, but actually I met once very early in my career as well in a techno club. Pretty much that's it. That's why. Um, Marek, Humanoid,
Yeah,
from the players I know, I would enjoy going out with him. Who else? Don't think there's many. If there are, please reach out. Like I'm down. I'm always good for a night in a club.
absolutely. Do you have any closing words? Any words about 2026? Anything you want to shout out? Anything personal? Any messages you want to share at the end of this interview?
Not really. Besides, I hope that the people listening to this and watching weekly or whenever they can, that they stay passionate about this. I think League is a really great game. I think League is a game that can tell many stories, and we put in the effort to make it interesting for you guys. And I hope that this passion never dies, because again, we all do this because we love
Oh,
it. I
just
hope.
as just as you say that, apparently Vitality Humanoid has just been confirmed by Chief
Good,
Esports. Any
good,
live comment on that?
good for Marek. I'm happy that he's back. Um, I think if he finds his drive, he will be very dangerous. Could be a bigger if. Um, And I mean, I will say good luck to Vitality, but I guess they know him for a long time. So if the coaching staff can make it happen, I guess it's those people.
Oh, Kazi and Humanoid are back together, eh?
Yeah, that's gonna be an interesting
That's like
thing
the
to make
we
for
we
sure.
talked. It's funny we talked about earlier the Fnatic Boaster and Crashies thing. We've got that's like the only example of that in Europe that we've got.
Yeah,
We've got
I
our
mean,
home.
I think what's interesting here is that I know they're friends, of course, but Kazi is more the Razork type player. So I'm interested to see how that will work out if they start losing 1 or 2 games.
Do you have any other? It's interesting. Sorry to keep you longer, but like in
Oh,
terms of
good.
in terms of speculation, how do you feel about the KC roster that's been built here? Because they've obviously brought in the Korean import. They've got Kalista and Busio, which on paper appears to be a very strong bot lane. Do you feel like they've not quote unquote won the off season, but at least done pretty well in terms of roster construction? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I think they've done pretty well. I think what's going to be more interesting is the rumored coaching position. If it's not that public, I'm not gonna say who I heard is gonna be there, but it's a big profile name,
Sorry,
and
where?
I
Sorry,
think hmm,
where did you say? Sorry.
that the coach that is rumored to join
Oh right, yeah.
is the more interesting fixture for them, or like signing, because I think KC had a very good team approach, but also very limited and a bit of a simpler way of playing the game. And if that rumored coach is it's known, I mean, chat is saying it's known. I'm not sure, so I'm not gonna say it to not add fuel to the fire. But if he can instill a bit more of a macro sense in the players, then I think KC is gonna be really strong. Yeah.
Interesting. Cool. And as for speaking of departures and alleged rosters, you said that it's a rarity for. You said at the top of the interview, it's a rarity for players to run teams. SK Gaming's got a new general manager. His name is Mickey X. What do you think of a purported alleged roster going on over there? Because it's obviously got some players that you've worked with.
He knows my opinion. We didn't make it for him. He had this idea before, so he knows I disagree with it. But I mean, again, I'm friends with him. I wish him the best. This is something that he tried to make happen for a long time. So, well, I think it's very interesting. Objectively, I don't think it's going to be that great, but if he makes it happen, I will be the happiest for him.
That's sweet. Thank you so much, GrabbZ. Thank you for coming on. Appreciate you coming.
Thanks for having me.
Make sure you disconnect the OBS link. Otherwise, if you go and have a wank now, everyone's going to see it. Unless, I mean, you said you've been to KitKat, so maybe you're an exhibitionist like that. So who
No,
knows?
whatever. No, actually, don't. This is not my tough club. Don't worry.
Fair
But yeah,
enough. Thank you
gotcha.
so much for coming. I hope you enjoyed
Right, man.
yourself.
Yeah. See ya.
Peace.
Thank you.
All right, guys. That brings us to the end of another edition of the off season. That's the name of the interviews. How did everyone feel about that? We enjoy that? How's chat feeling? That went a little bit longer than the inspired one. I feel like it was a really interesting conversation. One second, let me fit myself to the screen. Put myself down a little bit. Yeah, how does everyone feel about that? We like that one? We like that? I feel like it was super insightful. Yeah, guys, please, if you're around and you want to know when there are interviews going on, we ping everyone in the Discord. It's also a good community to be a part of. Come and join the Discord. Equally, I mean, actually, maybe I shouldn't be hiding my socials. You can see there. That's a bit better, isn't it? Follow me on the socials there. You can see, got my Instagram there. Lots of people saying, is that really your Instagram? Yes, it is. I've had that at since I was 15. I don't want to change it because it's like it's a rare at this point, you know. It's also funny. I'm bisexual, so it's an ironic name. Sometimes I tell people that's my at on Instagram, and they think I'm like a white nationalist or something, but it's meant to be like an ironic thing. But whatever. Follow me on Twitter as well. Equally, guys. I hope that people are really enjoyed this because, as mentioned before with the inspired one of my main goals with these interviews is essentially to I say this to everyone after I message everyone after the interviews. I always want to make sure that no one feels like their opinion has been misrepresented, and that often if I can see people maybe getting themselves into traps, that we release them from those because I don't want to do the out of context interview. Obviously, the goal is in some ways to have virality and have people watch this and give a fuck about it. So you want to navigate topics that are of interest to people. But I don't want it to be a thing where at the expense of personal relations or difficulty for the interview subject, we run into issues where they don't feel because then we just end up having a thing with the Ashley Kang Faker thing where he feels less confident talking about things in interviews for the years going forward because of the whole misquote thing that went on there. You see it happen so often, like players are afraid to do it. So I really want to hold a standard here on these interviews of just making sure that people feel like their opinion is being represented. And I feel like I don't know. What do you guys think? I feel like I got really a lot better of an insight on who GrabbZ was as a person from that. Would people say that they agree with that? Do you guys feel like you learned more about GrabbZ from this? That's great to hear. Thank you so much, guys. Um, as usual, I hate to have to say it, but I will be saying it after every interview. The VOD of this, if you've just come towards the end, the VOD is going to be sub only. Inspired YouTube video will be uploaded tomorrow, so if you want to skip the queue and watch it early, you can sub to the channel. The GrabbZ one, the VOD will be up as well. That will probably be the day after tomorrow. The VOD will be uploaded. Same time tomorrow, guys. 6 p.m. UK time, 7 p.m. European time. We've got Mickey X on. If you watch this one, you're going to want to watch that one because it's going to have the response of Mickey to a lot of the things that GrabbZ was talking about. His take on what Fnatic was like this year. Potentially what he's up to at the moment, some past stuff. It's going to be a really good follow up to this interview. That'll be tomorrow. Equally, guys, if you want to support the content, I really appreciate it. I hate asking for handouts. I've gotten enough handouts in my career from I Will Dominate. Literally paid for my existence most of 2023, 2024. But I'm in a position where, if you're not familiar with my story over the last couple months, I've been homeless at points. Unfortunately, got evicted, me and my mother, from our government housing because they're doing a regeneration project to build new flats. So I've faced some difficulty. I'm renting a flat from a friend at the moment for a cheaper rate, but I'm going to be moving out into somewhere else in a few days. So financial difficulties have been an issue over the last couple of months. So if you want to support in any way you can, it's much appreciated, but not obliged. I think that's the right way of saying it. It's not like expected, but much appreciated if you can. Direct donations to PayPal in the description below is heavily appreciated. There's someone I need to give a shout out to someone. There's someone who donated me quite a lot of money yesterday. If they're watching today, I want to give them a massive shout out. It was source_chan on Twitter. They sent me some money. Thank you so much for that. Really, if you want to support this content and you enjoy it and you love it and you want to see more of it, it's the best way to do it. I really have an intention of going to Worlds next year, going to all the events, doing more stuff like this in the off season, longer form stuff, but also going to the events and just telling stories because I think it's my calling, you know. So anyway, you want to support the stream by subbing, by donating. It really appreciates, and it also means that the guy who makes these wonderful graphics, shout out to Teddy in the chat, Dr. Limbani. It means I can give him a bit of money as well. Much appreciated. Really, really appreciate it, guys. Pin the PayPal link. I think it's in the chat, right? But yeah, I can PayPal that. I can pin that. But yeah, Mickey X tomorrow is gonna be a big one. So you'll be Fnatic GM. I already am the Fnatic GM. You'll run more ads. I don't like running ads during these. The trade-off is if you like the content. I'm not going to do the thing where it's like, oh, you have to sub to avoid the ads. I'm already doing that with the VODs. You want to watch the VODs early, that's the trade-off. But just if you want to sub, you want to sub. It means you're supporting the content, right? I don't want to run ads during it because it means that people can actually watch it, you know? Watching it live should be an incentive, you know? Thank you so much for the sub. Appreciate it. Run some ads now? Nah, I'm not into all of that, bro. If you want to give me like that, that's like I feel like that's just like wasting people's time for the expense of like small amount of money, you know? If you want to give me direct money, you can give me direct money, but I don't want to take the piss in that way. But that's gonna be it from me tonight, guys. I'm gonna go get some food now. But is it true you and Sam Matthews are involved in a sexual relationship? It's more emotional than it is sexual. To be honest with you. Cool. That's gonna be it from me tonight. Who should we go and raid? Oh, also go and check out EuroLeague, the show with Rich's Wrath and Kire and Nymira. I was on that last night. It's up tonight. It's up today. It should be out now, I think. Go and have a look at that. Um, a really funny episode actually. Really, really enjoyed being on that. Let's go and show some love to Jamada. We give him a lot of hate, but let's go and show him some love to Jamada. Yo, thank you, Ammo, bro. Appreciate you. Rodney SSBM as well, my guys, bro. Lots of love, man. Join the Discord, follow me on Twitter, all of that jazz. Thank you for the raid as well, Monster SSS. And if you're here from Monster SSS as well, I'm sorry I didn't get to say thank you. I was mid-interview. Tomorrow, 6 p.m. UK time, 7 p.m. CET. Make sure you're there. Mickey X. Right, let's go, Red Jamada. Peace, peace, peace.
Olivia's gonna start being useful soon. Yo, Jake, love, bro. Yo, how did the interview go?